This meeting to order. Would you please stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, let's get to it. Public notification of this meeting has been posted. Can you hear me now? How's that? No? You all gonna have to work on yours as well. How's this? Okay, Kevin, come join us. All right, the first order of business on our agenda is approval of our minutes from our meeting of December 5th. Are there any amendments to the modifications, deletions to the minutes?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just one for me. I actually attended the last meeting.
Okay, so noted. Your name will be added to the attendees of the last meeting.
Thank you.
Are there any other modifications, amendments? Hearing no objections, the minutes then are approved with the one modification. All right. I'm going to make a recommendation for a couple of amendments to the agenda. The first amendment that I'm going to make, and this will require a vote of the Planning Commission members, is that in discussion and on advice from our Planning Commission attorney, Mr. Brad Mitchell, I do not think it necessary nor in our best interest to include this executive session on our agenda, and I'm going to ask for a motion not to go into executive session.
Mr. Chairman, I so move.
Do I have a
Remove
second?
it from the executive,
All right.
the executive session from the agenda.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion? Excuse me, I'm sorry. Discussion.
Explanation?
Well, I'm going on the advice of our counsel. That it's not necessary. There's not a legal matter that impacts us on this, and that I don't believe that we need to do it. So
There was a legal matter, but now there's not. Okay,
I'm not sure that there was ever. I did not put this on the agenda.
okay, thanks.
All right. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion to remove this from the agenda, raise your hand. All right. It's unanimous. I'm going to make a second amendment to the agenda. The applicant under the zoning map amendment rezoning request has asked for a continuation of his rezoning request until the February agenda. And so we'll place it on the February agenda. That's the zoning map amendment number 8, 3 Benton Lane in Bluffton. Okay. All right. Yeah, so raise your hand if you can't hear me. All right. So that's being moved to February. That being the case, then we have the first action item to discuss is the text amendment to the Community Development Code, Section 3.4.50, Cultural Protection Overlay, CBO Zone Standards. Before I get into that, we get into the presentation for that from the county, I'd like to just make a couple of comments regarding public speaking.
Do you want to approve the agenda now?
Yes.
If I'll put the motion up if you want.
Okay, well, we approved the First Amendment. All right. Take a vote for approval of the remaining agenda. All those approve?
Aye.
Okay. regarding public comments this evening,
I'm sorry, it was item 6 is citizen comments, non-agenda items. Are there people in the room?
That's what he's going on right now.
No, he's going into.
no, I'm going over, I'm
CPO.
gonna go over
Okay,
that.
Great.
To that point, is there anyone in the room who would like to talk about an issue not on the agenda? If so, this is your opportunity to do that. Okay. Regarding the issue on the agenda, some comments regarding public comments. If you wish to make a public comment, please submit your request to speak to the Community Development Director, Department Secretary over here on my left. Raise your hand, and she'll give me a form that I will call your name as it's presented. I have about 50 here. And then the, okay, 51.
51. Awesome.
Anybody who wants to speak obviously can. That's what this is about. You'll be allowed 3 minutes to speak. The commissioners will be respectfully listening to your comments. At the podium, when you come to the podium to speak, please clearly state your name and your address for the record. In turn, I would ask that you be respectful to the public forum that you're in. This public meeting is recorded and therefore becomes a matter of public record, as does all correspondence on this issue directed to county officials. And we've gotten quite a bit of correspondence. One reminder as we start out, the Planning Commission is an advisory body to County Council, an advisory body. We make recommendations, and as such, the PC Planning Commission recommendation on this issue goes forward to County Council through the Natural Resources Committee. It's now been relabeled Land Use Committee. Then it goes on to County Council for their review and voting determination. So the Planning Commission recommendation that will be achieved tonight is the first step, just the first step in the review process and voting determination by County Council. All right, with that said, let's start. Administration, Mr. Greenway, would you like to address?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. The reason that you have a text amendment on the agenda this evening is that sometimes during the process of dealing with specific issues and items, we discover problems with existing ordinances and language within those ordinances that could potentially pose legal or other concerns as far as the effective enforcement of those. And as a result of reviewing some applications and some proposals to the for this area, we discovered that the current cultural preservation overlay has some things in it that causes the county legal department and the county administration some legal concerns. Now, the fact that you all did not vote to go into executive session leaves us no choice but to address those legal concerns with you all in open session, and we're happy to do that with you all. But I just want you to be mindful that this may open us up to some sort of legal challenge on the current language in the CPO, because we're going to be forced to give you all our concerns from a legal standpoint on the record in front of everyone, including the potential applicants for a potential development. Second thing I will say about this is that while everyone thinks that this is related to the Pine Island issue, this is not being driven by the Pine Island request. This is being driven by concerns that we have about the existing language in our ordinance from a text that was written many, many years ago, prior to many legal challenges that have happened over the course of the last several decades that have changed the thinking on things, and I'm gonna turn this over to our county attorney in a moment with that. So the issue tonight does not have anything to do with Pine Island. It has to do with a modification to the Community Development Code. Pine Island does not have an official application before the Planning Commission this evening. We have tabled that in order to try to get this text amendment before the Planning Commission and the council so that we can hopefully strengthen the cultural preservation overlay in a manner for it to attempt to narrow the focus, to strengthen the cultural preservation overlay in order to make it better fulfill its intent and purpose as stated in the current language of the ordinance. So there was a application filed by Pine Island to amend the zoning map to remove Pine Island from the cultural preservation overlay. And we requested that we be allowed to go forward with the text amendment to try to figure out a way to strengthen the cultural preservation overlay with the Pine Island property within that cultural preservation overlay. And we requested that we table their application for map amendment, and that's what we've done. But that item for the map amendment is not on the table tonight. It is strictly a text amendment that has been put forth by the county administration, not from the applicant or the developer of Pine Island, based on our concerns. And let me address one additional thing. This happens routinely as we're dealing with situations. You all dealt with a similar situation just a couple of months ago where we had someone that placed a cargo container on a piece of property that we got a complaint on, and they indicated that they wanted to convert that cargo container into a residence of some type. Well, we proceeded immediately to bring forward a text amendment to you all for you all to consider and make a recommendation to the county council to change the text of the code to prohibit those uses before that permit was issued. So what we're doing this evening is standard practice in the course of doing business on a daily basis. Sometimes we discover things at the staff level or at the administration level that requires us to modify the existing language in the code. And that's what we're doing this evening. You all as the Planning Commission, of course, have the right as an advisory body to the county council to recommend whatever you want to. You can either modify the text, you can recommend denial, or you can recommend approval. And we're certainly okay with that. But we felt that you needed to hear the concerns about the existing language of the CPO, the potential pitfalls with any type of legal defense that we may need to put forward should the current language of the CPO be challenged, which could result ultimately, after several months or years, in the total elimination of the cultural preservation overlay should certain aspects of the current cultural preservation overlay language be found by a court to be invalid or arbitrary or capricious. So I'm going to turn it over to Brittany Ward now, who is the county attorney for administration and department heads, and she's going to come up and talk to you about the concerns with the current language.
Good evening. Thank you for the introduction again. I'm Brittany Ward. I oversee the departments and administration.
Yeah.
What is in front of you today, again, I'm going to repeat some of what the county administrator just said. The county throughout the last year has had over 10 amendments to the CDC. This is yet another example of the county continuously looking at the CDC when problems come up or when issues or concerns, certain projects come forward. This is not, what I'm presenting to you tonight is not about a developer. It is about the CDC and about the ordinance itself and how it reads. So I want to be focused in on that. As the county administrator just said, there are certain aspects to this ordinance and the way it is currently written that could lead to potential litigation and the likelihood of having the CPO eliminated in its entirety if they were to succeed in court. This is the county's attempt to alleviate any legal aspects of that, and to eliminate the ability of a developer to potentially come in and sue for multiple reasons. I believe everybody has received the memo that we wrote previously, everybody in the commission, and you have the amendments up here on the screen. The amendments and what we have done, I want to also be very clear in stating that we are not removing any language. There's no any language in the current text that is being removed. What the county is asking or recommending is that the text be amended to include the opportunity of a development agreement to be entered into. And that is because the current language is overly broad in our opinion. The fact that this encumbers over 64 square miles, and the fact that the scope in which it is restricting could be determined to be overly broad. In addition to that, there is a potential of a lack of nexus between the purpose of the CPO and what the language actually is stating. In addition to that, there's specific language that brings a greater concern to us concerning a 9-hole golf course being prohibited. It is my understanding that golf courses previously were defined as 9 holes or more. That definition caused some concern to our legal department because of the connection of what would happen to an 8-hole golf course. You would still be allowed to build out there a driving range, a putt-putt course, and why would those things not be considered an outlier? Additionally, there are other reasons to believe that this is an overly broad ordinance in the sense that there are other items that are permissible and are not explicitly excluded from this list, such as shopping malls, movie theaters, driving ranges, putt-putt, which I already said. Therefore, we're only excluding certain aspects to this, and again, it's unclear what those items are in terms of the connection to the overall purpose of the CPO. It would be the recommendation of the county to amend the language to allow for a development agreement to be entered into in order to alleviate any concerns regarding nexus, takings possibly, and overly broad, arbitrary and capricious claims. There's many legal terms you can throw out there as far as what brought concern to the legal department. The amendment here is asking for the ability to have a development agreement entered into to allow for county council at that point and staff to work with the developer to ensure that there are no legal aspects or legal claims that could be made. Are there any questions?
I have a question. Could you explain what you mean by what is a lack of nexus? I'm not a lawyer. I don't know
The
what that means.
connection between the restriction of a nine-hole golf course, I'll use that as an example because it's a fairly easy one. Restricting a 9-hole golf course. If they don't want if the public or the county doesn't want golf courses, okay. But the connection to it being a cultural protection overlay and allowing an 8-hole golf course, there's a lack of a nexus of what are you trying to accomplish?
I'm still not getting it. So the lack of nexus means what? It means
The
that
connection between the restriction or the language and what the purpose of the CPO.
Yeah, so basically it's a logical connection between what is the impact on the culture negatively of St. Helena Island between an 8-hole golf course. It's okay to have an 8-hole golf course in the current language that does not have a negative impact on the culture of the island. But if you add an additional hole, then
you have a negative impact on the culture of the island. There's no logical connection to say that 8 holes are okay, but 9 holes are not. So there's no rational basis for saying that. And a court may say that that's an arbitrary requirement and that there's no rational nexus between saying it's okay for 8, but 9 is too much. And that could invalidate that particular provision.
So that's a
of the
legal
code.
term. I mean, that's something
Yeah,
that. I
rational
don't think
nexus.
anyone in this room
Yeah.
is interested in 8 holes versus 9 holes. I'm just saying.
Well, I
That's
agree
really
with that.
not our issue.
Right. Well, the issue is that the current overlay allows an 8-hole golf course, okay? So a developer could theoretically
No.
come in,
It doesn't allow
And,
any golf courses.
say they could build 2 8-hole golf courses on the same piece of property, and then a third 2-hole golf course, if you can have 8 holes, okay? There's no provision in this ordinance. Again, the language in the current ordinance is so broad, there is no connection and no standard to say how it's to be enforced and applied. It just says you can't have more than an 8-hole golf course. It doesn't tie it to a property. It doesn't tie it to a tax map number. They could call, they can have 3 golf courses adjacent to each other on the same piece of property with different names. There's a ton of loopholes in the current language, and that's what we're trying to clean up to say, hey, we're going to try to tighten up this language to basically establish a way for the cultural preservation overlay to actually do something to fulfill its purpose and intent to enhance the culture of St. Helena Island if somebody wants to come in and do a development within the cultural preservation overlay, and that would be through a development agreement. Just saying that these things are prohibited does nothing to enhance the culture of St. Helena Island. And you've got to have a rational basis, even for a gated community. What about a gated community has a negative impact on the culture of St. Helena Island? What about a resort would have a negative impact on the culture of St. Helena Island? That's the concern. And the real concern is, one of the most significant concerns for me as a professional planner and also as a county administrator now is the nexus between the current language allowing an 8-hole golf course, but saying a 9-hole golf course is too much if you add 1 additional hole. That's a real problematic issue, if that makes sense to you all. So that's what we're trying to clean up, to say that golf courses are allowed, gated community might be allowed, resort might be allowed, but the developer, if they want to propose those things, they have to enter into a development agreement with the county that will undergo a large public process of public scrutiny to basically say how they're going to allow those uses or do those uses in this area and what they're going to do to further the purpose and intent of the ordinance and enhance the cultural aspects of St. Helena Island and protect that and enhance that. And that's what the purpose of the text amendment is. So.
Go ahead. Just like
I think Kevin I don't mean to take up a lot of the time here, but
Well,
I think Kevin had his hand up.
yeah, I guess I'm looking at this code here, and I'm looking at golf course. You said nothing's gonna be taken out of it, right? You only wanna add in what's highlighted in yellow,
Correct,
correct?
correct.
So if somebody came along and said, I'm gonna do an 8, and a 2, or some other Mickey Mouse kind of a golf course, how is that highlighted remarks gonna make any difference at all?
Because if you create the provision to allow them to do it the correct way, then you take away the need to try to look for loopholes in the language that currently exists. So if you create a provision and say you can do a full-fledged golf course, if you enter into a development agreement with the county, then most developers are gonna choose that least path of resistance then, as opposed to doing what we were talking about was our original concern.
And I think into addition of Mr. Greenway's statement, the first section there, it does reference the parcel containing 50 acres of Highland. So to your point, if a golf course was being put in 50 acres, they would have to enter into a development agreement if they wanted to have an exception to the requirements below.
Oh, if they wanted to have an exception to the requirements.
So I think what your question was, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but if somebody wanted to put in an 18-hole golf course, yes, they would have to, they cannot do it under the CPO.
No, I understand that, but what I'm thinking of is the example that Eric gave, which is, okay, so I can't put an 18 in. I'll put a 6, 6, and 6, right? And I'm gonna name it the Betsy Golf Course, the John Golf Course, and the Mary Golf Course. 3 separate golf courses. According to this, I can have.
That is
right?
correct.
Okay. My second question is, and this is just kind of a technical one, is that language there, is it even correct anyway? It doesn't look like it
Yes.
reads right. Well, read it. It says, this use includes regulation and par 3 golf courses having 9 or more holes.
That is correct. It's
So
describing an
that's- and
8-hole.
It could be longer holes. You could put an 8-hole par 5 golf course
Yes.
in, according to this.
Yes.
Okay.
Put
Okay,
an
that's
8-hole, you could put an 8-hole any type of golf course according to that.
right. Well, what it's saying is, any regulation or par 3.
Right. Yeah.
So I guess my question though is, if this is already here and this is not coming out, and this is being added in, how are you gonna say to the developer, hey, you can't do that, you gotta have a development agreement? He's gonna turn around and say, no, I don't. According to that, it says here, I can have a regulation, it says golf courses, okay, and par 3 golf courses. So which is more than one?
Right. No, it's a good thought. It's a good point.
Yeah.
It's probably something we should tighten up.
Well, that's why I asked if it was written right, because I'm looking at it as, oh yeah, I'd ask you for that development agreement if I needed it. I don't need it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna file under this.
Yeah, I mean, just based on our experience, whenever you present someone an option to do something, again, the right way, they're gonna choose the development agreement option and do it the right way as opposed to trying to find a loophole.
I don't think that's a loophole, I think that's the code,
Yeah, well, I agree, Ray. I agree with you.
right? So, I just need an application, that's all I really need.
We probably need to tighten up that language to make sure that it's clear that if they're gonna do more than if they're gonna do a golf course, it needs to be 50 acres and it needs to include a development agreement of any type.
Of any time.
Of any type, yeah. It's a good thought. Yeah.
So good afternoon, Chuck Atkinson. I'm the Division Director for Development and Recreation. I don't think the lines are as clearly delineated, Kevin, as you're making them out to be, and I want to explain, and I want to talk about development agreements. To say that we could do 3 6-hole golf courses as one development, I don't think is a factual statement. There are individual requirements that each of those 3 developments would have to do, and they would have very unique boundaries and separations between the 2. So to say that this is a clear workaround is, I know that's not exactly what you said, but if that were the case, that's not the case. So now let's talk about development agreements. All these wonderful people behind me, right? This is a public forum. This is what it's designed to be. Because of what I just described, the likelihood of the county being sued over this is extremely high in my opinion. If the county is sued, rather than going with a development agreement option, so that all of these wonderful folks and all of you and everybody on council can vet a development agreement and be in the driver's seat, there's a very high likelihood that this is going to go to court. If it goes to court, I will assure you that nobody in that court is going to call anyone in this room and ask for their opinion. They're not, right? So we're all well-intentioned. We all want the highest and best use for this whole area and for the overlay. There's a hole in this boat. The county is trying desperately, the staff is trying to plug this hole before it gets to the point where the ship rolls over. So we could throw hypotheticals out, but to say, I'll go back to where I started, to say that we could do 3 6-hole golf courses, make it an 18-hole development and use that as a workaround, that is not factual. There would be huge issues with how that is designed, how they would have to be separate, how the accesses would have to play out. It wouldn't work. So if they came to staff and wanted to do that and it looked like a development, that would not fly. So I just wanted to make that point that we're correcting something that is a very long-standing error. You know, it may not get challenged, but if it does, I just wanted to point out the fact, nobody in this room is going to get a vote on that. So we're trying to control this. We're trying to put it where everybody will have a say in the long run, and that the purpose of the CPO will be served. So I hope that helps. Thank you.
Yeah, Chuck, I have a question about the process you went through to plug the hole in the boat. As you know, a lot of work was done, and the comprehensive plan took 2 years to roll out. A lot of dialogue, a lot of town meetings, churches,
Yeah.
schools, Penn Center, etc. And a lot of things came out of that and went into the comprehensive plan that were strengthening the cultural, historic, and environmental overlay in St. Helena. Have you, and that includes, as I understand it, the creation of a cultural protection overlay committee, who I understand is having meetings right now and has a future calendar. And as your process to help plug this hole, did you consult with them? Did you work with them? Did you get their inputs so that you know you've got the right plug in the right hole?
So first of all, if the folks in the room would please,
Yeah, please
be courteous,
please be respectful.
it would be appreciated. So the committee, their first meeting was held long after this whole conversation started, right? Staff did not pick this up 2 weeks ago or right before Christmas. This has been a long-standing issue that we have been working on, working with our legal staff. We were far down the field when that committee was established and the first meeting was held in December. Our staff presented this issue as being a standing issue. It was discussed publicly, and it was told to that committee at their first meeting. So my perception on that is, yes, at the earliest opportunity, it was. Now, the committee is standing. Has it been vetted through the committee and voted, and is there a recommendation out of that committee yet? No, because they're new and they've only met once, and this has already been going down that track long before they had their first meeting.
Could you were you at that meeting?
I was not at that meeting. I was on vacation. Sorry.
Okay, great. So I was.
Yep.
And I think what you're missing is the point that we're not a bunch of idiots. I mean, fundamentally, that meeting includes a lot of people who've been working on this issue for 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, I mean, to me, I don't really know, perhaps you could tell me what you do exactly? And,
Yeah, sure.
and why, you are telling the committee that has just been seated what they should be doing?
I'm sorry, the committee that has just been defeated?
Seated.
Seated.
S-E-A-T-E-D.
I'm not
Seated.
telling anybody what you should be doing. I am simply, as a staff member, giving you our perspective, and I have certainly not called anybody an idiot.
It feels like a threat. It feels like to me
No, ma'am.
that you're threatening
No.
people with a lawsuit to the county.
Cecily,
I'll let you deal with it.
please.
If I may respond, this is not a threat of any legal action. This is us, county staff, informing you as a commission that this is a possibility. The fact that I was standing up here and very carefully using my words, because the executive session was not being held, that was providing you with legal advice in the sense that I'm warning you that there could be some potential legal suits filed. That is not a threat to commission, it's not a threat to anybody else in this room. It is a fact. It is a fact that that's what we're looking at. That's how this has been reviewed from the legal department, because that's our job. My job is to look at ordinances and protect the county from any lawsuits, to make sure that the law is fair and constitutional, and all the above. We do this all the time. I just told you the CDC has been revised 10 times this year. We just also recently revised our animal control ordinance in its entirety. We do this frequently. Unfortunately, this has an emotional tie to it because of the purpose of it. So please don't take anything we're saying as a threat. It is a fact that the legal department reviewed it, and that our position is that there is a possibility that a lawsuit could be filed. And that's
Are
simply
you
all it
saying
is.
that
Just
it's,
to be clear, you're talking about a lawsuit from a developer wanting to do something,
Correct.
not to anybody in the room.
No,
Only
but
to
the
the
result of that, the likely result, if a individual were to win in that suit, the result would be the CPO being taken away. So that's why we're taking the steps in which we are. There are several options, and I'm telling you the most simplistic version of that. I would suggest that if you have any other questions on that, I would defer to Brad Mitchell here in the room that represents the commission, and he can give additional legal advice on that.
Our attorney.
may I just ask for the clarification of the comment that this was already in motion before this committee was formed, and they just had an inaugural meeting. Now and so the train has left the station, you're saying, and it can't be reversed. It's too late to go back and get their inputs. And this is a very serious issue, obviously, to many, many people and organizations across the county, across the region, throughout the state.
It's not too late to reverse anything, but we did have an application filed for a map amendment to remove a certain parcel, about 700 acres of land, from the cultural preservation overlay in its entirety, so that the property could be developed outside of the CPO provisions. So when that came in, we worked with the applicant and asked them to delay their application, to allow us to table the application so that we could file this text amendment that we were already considering doing, and clean up the language so that we could, again, get rid of the legal jeopardy items inside the current language, and also carry out a provision that we thought would enhance and further improve the cultural preservation overlay. So,
Mr. Stewart?
I'm sure this is confusing to all of us, including myself as a commissioner. I want to read a paragraph here. And the purpose of the CPO is the protection is established to provide a long-term protection of the culturally significant resources found on St. Helena Island. The CPO zone acknowledges St. Helena's historic cultural landscape, and it's important as the center of Beaufort County's most notable concentration of Gullah culture. I don't see the direction we're going as doing that. I think we need to back up and take a bigger picture and a better look. I look at, this is what I'm looking at here. Okay, it's on the screen. I know a lot of people can't see it. But I don't know that that finding a legal technicality to plug a hole in the dike is the way to go here.
and that's
How
not,
do we protect?
yeah, so I'm going to interrupt you because you're taking a
Excuse me,
tone.
I have the floor.
Yeah, you're taking a tone with me and the staff that's inappropriate.
That's right.
So
I know. I beg your pardon.
Yeah.
I beg your pardon.
So we're not doing anything on a technicality. What we're doing is explaining to you all our concerns with the ordinance Now, again, you as a member of the planning commission, you have every right to have the opinion that you want to have, but you do not have the right to attack the staff for coming forward.
That wasn't an attack, that was
Yes,
an
sir.
opinion.
Well, I think we go by that, let's,
Right.
I don't
So-
think that's the issue here.
Right, so we are trying to bring something forward and explain to you all what the concerns are. Again, you all as a planning commission, as I explained to you in my opening statement, you have the right to recommend to modify the text language, deny the text language, or recommend to approve the text language. Those are your three options. It doesn't have to get any more complicated than that. It doesn't have to get emotional. It doesn't have to do anything beyond that. We're doing our job. We're presenting things to you in accordance with the process that's been established by the county code and state law. And then we're just asking you all to do your job. And we all need to be professional as we go about doing that.
All right, thank you.
You called me unprofessional, I take a,
Please. Mr. Stewart. Elliot, please, a little more civility here. We're trying to get to a point of agreement on an issue, and if we're not gonna reach agreement, that's okay too, but let's do it in a way to be respectful. Any further questions?
Okay, as I understand it, if a developer would file a lawsuit and win that lawsuit, that could potentially remove the entire CPO.
That is a possibility.
That is a possibility. So what you're trying to do is prevent that by this text amendment.
Correct.
Okay. So that clarifies things a little bit.
Ed, could I follow up?
Go ahead, Cecily.
The difficulty to me is that, I mean, let's forget about the word enhance, which Eric used like 9 times. That's another word, right? I don't think that enhance is what we're talking about here. However, I do think that if we're talking about a lawsuit, this is something that is, from your point of view, I understand, direct threat to the county.
Correct.
Get it? That has not yet materialized to my knowledge.
Correct.
Okay, so I think that as planning commissioners, we kind of deal with the threats of lawsuits and, you know, bad behavior, good behavior all the time. I think, in my opinion, the idea that the CPO could be eliminated, sure, it's out there, but, you know, there are lots of things in planning which we must do to keep proceeding and keep moving along, right? Me and my colleagues, that's why we're here. This is why we do it. We're all volunteers. So I think that is, while I understand your point of view and I want to be civil, I simply don't think it's the threat that you seem to think it is. And I think a lot of people in this room, I'm not speaking for them, I do live on St. Helena Island. I happen to be, you know, the representative from St. Helena on this planning commission. I myself do not agree with you, and I sort of want that on the record. And I think lots of people in this room would not agree with you.
Understood.
But I get it, but you're doing your job.
And I appreciate you understanding what my point of view, that is my job, is to prevent legal action and to protect the interests of the county and its citizens. So, but again, that's why we're here. That's why the system has been set up, so that everybody does have an opinion and it can be voted on behalf of everybody else in the room. I can read the text in its entirety if you would like. Your Chairman?
Yes, please, do so.
Can everybody in the room hear me? The highlighted text says, the following specific uses are deemed to be incompatible with the CPO zone and therefore are prohibited unless, 1, the parcel contains 50 acres of highland, and a development agreement is entered into with Beaufort County that imposes and implements criteria, i.e. additional buffers, density reductions, additional open space locations, dock space limitations, infrastructure improvements, local cultural support mechanisms, etc., that protects and enhances the surrounding community, environment, and the CPO zone. And 3, the development agreement shall include terms for the regulation of land uses in order to protect and otherwise improve the CPO zone more significantly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions from the commission?
I'm reading this here, and I read it several times, and here's where I'm struggling with. I actually think that if I took that yellow piece out, I actually think the language is pretty good. I think it's pretty clear. It says, the following specific uses are deemed to be incompatible with the CPO zone, which we've already defined what the CPO zone is. We've defined the purpose, the boundaries, etc. That's very clear, okay? Semicolon, and therefore are prohibited. And then it goes on to say restricted gated access communities, resort. This one is, again, the way it was written, but it looks like in this one here, they wrote in what you could do. In the other two, they kind of wrote in what you can't do, okay? But either way, I think if I read section D of this minus the yellow, right, I'm okay with it. I'm fine with it. And again, I'm not the lawyer, okay? You're the lawyer, but I'm okay with it as the planning commission member. I think that language is good enough to protect us, okay?
Again, I want to be clear, my position here is not to convince you, otherwise it's here to be
Yeah,
factual.
no,
So
no, I
I
understand.
will defer to the system we put in place for you to have your vote and express that opinion.
Yeah, couldn't we just say no golf courses? Is that all the?
As Eric, as a county administrator had stated, there's a process here. We're here to present the facts. I'm here to tell you my opinion, and whether you agree or disagree. And you have the ability to state whether you want changes to be made, or whether you agree in its entirety or not. This is the process. You all are aware of it as sitting members of this commission. So
Again, my own opinion, I just believe if we go in and start tinkering with a single letter in this thing, we basically open up the whole thing for additional scrutiny, et cetera, et cetera. I'm, like I said, me personally, I'm okay with this language. I think it protects us enough. I think it satisfies the purpose of what, this cultural protection overlay. I mean, I don't know who created this zone. Somebody did, and somebody voted on it, and somebody approved it, and somebody thought it was a really good idea. I happen to agree with that too. But, I don't know, that's kind of where I am with it.
I would like to hear from you about why you don't think this is covered. You're a lawyer, I'm not, none of us are, I don't think, on this board. Why don't you think that it is covered?
that it covers,
Any adverse uses, in other words, this gentleman's point that he thinks our current language is acceptable, why don't you think it's acceptable?
so I think I understand your question, but stop me if I misinterpret it. In reviewing it, again, we'll go to the nexus of what it is it's restricting, how it's restricting it, the specific language is being used, and whether there is a direct connection or nexus to the purpose of the CPO. I'm not sure how else to say that Mr. Greenway explained it pretty well as far as a nexus between what it's restricting.
Please.
So what about the basic question that you, as a planning commissioner, and we as planners have to ask ourselves is, what about a gated community has a negative impact or could have a negative impact on the culture of St. Helena Island.
And is there a difference, and we've gone through
If you-
several,
If you can't answer that to the affirmative and basically state what the harm to the general welfare, the public, things like that are concerned, then it's probable, it's not, you never can say 100% what a court might do, but based on court cases that have occurred since this was adopted in
Yes.
1999, it may be found to be invalid.
Yeah.
The same thing is about, a resort. What about a resort could have a negative impact on the culture of St. Helena Island? I think I could probably get there on the resort and establish that. But a golf course, it's okay to have 8 holes, not okay to have 9 holes. So 9 holes has a negative impact on the culture of St. Helena Island, but 8 holes does not, whether it's par 3 or regulation or whatever. So that's problematic just based on its very face. And then in addition to that, these are the only 3 prohibited uses. There's tons of other uses out there, land uses out there, that could potentially have a negative impact on the culture of St. Helena Island, in particular zoning districts that aren't listed in this ordinance. And this particular ordinance that is regulating 3 specific uses covers, somewhere around 64 square miles of the island. That is a very broad area to say that in every place on that 64 square miles that a gated community, a resort, or a golf course would be inappropriate on all 64 square miles of the island. And that's the broadness of the question that has us cause some concerns. But again, we're here to present the concerns. You all as a planning commission have every right, again, to modify the amendment on a recommendation, approve it, or recommend that it be denied. I don't think you have the right to table it, because I think probably what will happen is, if it is tabled and working with the CPO committee, that the developer is probably, if we're Pine Island, would probably say, we want to go forward with our request for a map amendment. And that's not a threat, that's just a likelihood of that occurring. I don't know I have somewhat of a feeling of what you all would do with that. I don't know what the county council is going to do with either one of those. So the staff's thinking was, it would be better for us to preserve the area of the CPO and offer some modifications to it to basically tighten up the language and to tailor it specifically to the uses to allow these things and provisions for some of these things to occur in appropriate locations with the development agreement, as opposed to it just being broadly prohibited everywhere for such a large area across the board, geographic location.
All right. Are there any more questions?
Sure.
I want to get to the public here.
Oh, yeah, 2 quick questions. I just checked my phone at 6:53. It's so interesting to me, never have I heard the word gulliculture in this discussion.
All right.
We're not talking about a parking lot on Hilton Head. I mean, you all, I know you're doing your job, but really, you have not taken in the dimension, cultural protection overlay. Part 1. No,
All right.
I mean, respectfully.
All right.
Number 2 is that for years, I was on the planning commission in the 1980s, so this is my second time at this rodeo. And the point is, besides the threats of being sued, got it, been there, done that. The point is, every single developer who comes before us wants to get the county out of their business. Like, the county is impossible, this, that, and the other. You are proposing a series of development agreements.
No, we're not.
Well, yes, that's what the yellow, 50 acres of highland, I don't even know what that means for, 14 feet above sea level, I don't know. I mean, I live on a high space.
Means it's not, it's an area outside of a wetlands.
Right, but entirely development agreement, that is, it's entirely transactional. What you're asking, what the county is asking, is that all of these, if the CPO is eliminated, in its place will become a series of transactional relationships.
No, ma'am.
That is not policy.
I want to be clear. What we're trying to do is prevent the CPO from being removed, and therefore.
No, you want the CPO to be removed.
No, ma'am, not at all. That's what we are trying to prevent from happening.
All right, I think, can we move forward? We're getting into a debate, and I'd like to hear from the public, and we've got quite a few people who would like to talk.
But I just want
So
to lay
unless
some
there's,
ground rules, Ed.
I understand, and I'm sure it'll come up again. I'm sure we'll learn very soon.
Chairman, if I may, can I make one comment?
Yes, ma'am, go ahead. Thank you.
You just made a pretty supportive statement for what we're presenting here. You said that when developers come in front of you, they don't like development agreements because the county's sitting there regulating them and making them do all these things. That is what you said, correct? Or around the,
That's been my experience.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
but that's exactly the reason we want to put this language in. This language is to help have this type of public forum and allow for the CPO to be enhanced, to make sure that there is development out there, that they're forced to have a development agreement for that exact reason, so there is public comeback and that we are enforcing and enhancing it. I just
We're
want to.
totally going to disagree on this one.
That's
I'm
fine.
sorry.
I just wanted to
It's
comment
transactional. The planning
that.
department is under-resourced. People turn over all the time. It's a power
Understood.
imbalance between somebody who has $21 million and staff.
Leslie, please. I understand, I appreciate your comments, but I think I want to keep it
You're good.
moving,
I'm
I want to
fine.
keep it
I'll
moving
keep
forward.
quiet.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for your time. I think we're about to find out the value of the culture, history, and environmental significance of St. Helena from those who would like, who wanted to speak. I've got about 60 of these here, so that means we're going to be here for probably another 3 hours. I would offer this. Everybody that wants to speak can speak, but if you're going to be repetitive of what you've heard before, then I would say we can take a show of hands. Everybody believes that or doesn't believe that. We can do it any way you want. I want to move through this to be to get as many people who wish to speak to do that. But I want to make it such that people don't walk out of the room early because they get tired or they've got to go home. They've got other commitments. As I said, this is the first step in this review process that will go forward to county council ultimately for a determination. And more information than that can be found on the county website. All right, I'm going to call the names, and again, I would say, please introduce yourself when you come to the mic for the public record. You'll be allowed 3 minutes. I have a moderator over here who's going to have a little ding, and that's not to be disrespectful, but it's to keep us moving forward. Otherwise, we'll be here till midnight. And if that's okay with you, that might happen. All right, can we begin? And please be as respectful as you can. We want to have a dialogue, not an argument. All right, the first speaker, okay. Our first speaker is Queen Quet, please.
Happy New Year, Commissioners in Beaufort County. Out of Queen Quet, Marquette L. Goodwine, address. Happy New Year, Commissioners in Beaufort County, Gullah Geechee family. Out of Queen Quet, head funded body of the Gullah Geechee Nation, address Post Office Box 1207, St. Helena Island, South Carolina, 29920, Gullah Geechee Nation. This evening, it's very difficult for me get to why I throw upon this your paper and thing like that. Because ain't no, and come ya, ain't a been ya, one no. And now why you here this evening. So I go crack my teeth out the rest of the way for all the hundred been ya, and harm ya. Because the been ya know they come here don't know what the been ya know. Okay? So I'm going to speak this way for all the new people to Beaufort County, including staff, attorneys that I sat here and listened to for the past several minutes. I have letters here. I also got a phone call from our representative, Michael Rivers, in opposition to text changes, map changes, and removal of any area from our Cultural Protection Overlay District. I also have a letter here from Governor McMaster to that effect. I also have a letter here from Chip Campson, who is also our representative, to that effect. But I'm going to spend my time right now just clarifying some things. I served as the inaugural Cultural Protection Overlay District chairperson for more than 5 years of my life. I spent 5 years also as the CP district chairperson. So I can tell you that for all intents and purposes, zoning is law. Ignorance of the law is no defense. And if you are going to argue a case about the law, then you should know the initial intent of the law. I was one of the founders of the Cultural Protection Overlay District. I'm one of the last living members that actually was part of a large group of us that came before County Council and got this initiated in the 1990s. And we were told then that if Beaufort County initiated the Cultural Protection Overlay District, that Beaufort County would be sued. We said, bring it on. So here I am again, standing essentially in the same spot. All of this time later, hearing the same things. And no one then saying to me, who has now been placed on the Cultural Protection Overlay District again, what happened at that meeting? It was stated that things were stated to us in December that were never stated. It was stated that we were handed whatever that was on that screen and what I was looking over her shoulder reading. We were not handed any such thing. So I want to spend this time to get that on the record, that if you would be disingenuous, as you all say in your language, as we would say, if one of the story and you're deceiving and a thing like that, how can we trust you? It's about building relationship. My culture, been here before there was all this law that we're talking about. But we stood up long enough to say there should be a law that protects the epicenter of Gullah Geechee culture. And it's not just the epicenter for Beaufort County. It is the epicenter for the entire Gullah Geechee Nation, of which I am the head of state. My people elected me to speak about and for them around the world, from Jacksonville, North Carolina to Jacksonville, Florida. I came back from the United Nations Council of Parties events, being able to tell them, the United States and all the other world leaders like myself, that we don't need to talk about loss and damage, because with Gullah Geechee culture, there's no loss and there's no damage, because we ain't gonna allow hunter children for damage, we like that, and we ain't gonna lose who we be. And so I could not believe that I was being emailed to even discuss that there would be a negative change to the Cultural Protection Overlay District. That last section that was read by this gentleman about in the discussion about the golf courses, I can tell you when we established the CPO originally, it said no golf courses, period. Period. There was no definition of a golf course in it. There also was not the word ecotourism in it. And I brought that up at the Cultural Protection Overlay District meeting that was only a gathering to ask us if we would serve. We did not conduct business. We did not elect a chair, a vice chair, or anything. We were trying to figure out whether we even had a quorum for quite some time. So I wanted to address that because I'm sitting here as someone who was there that could be clear on the matter that you all weren't clear about. And to say to you that on behalf of the Gullah Geechee Nation, the Gullah Geechee Sea Island Coalition, the Gullah Geechee Fishing Association, and the parties that entrusted in me their letters to bring to you tonight, along with the 5,222 signatures on these petitions that I'm going to enter into the record, that we do not want you doing any map changes, text amendments or changes to the Cultural Protection Overlay District for St. Helena Island. We want that job to be left to those who County Council has assigned to do that job, which is the Cultural Protection Overlay District Committee, that we are asking you tonight to deny what is being asked of you by staff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was a quick 3 minutes. Okay, please try to abide by the 3 minutes. I want to be respectful to you, but I also want to get everybody a chance to speak, and I don't want to eliminate that opportunity. I have a Mr. Joe Strock, the next speaker. If you changed your mind, don't wish to speak, just raise your hand and say so. Is it Joey or Joe? Joey, all right.
My real name is Josephine, but I go by Joy.
All right.
I live at 23 Coffin Bluff Road on St. Helena Island. And I am opposed to a resort, a gated community, and a golf course being built in St. Helenaville and Pine Island. The environmental impact of the development would be devastating to our tidal creeks, Morgan River, and marshlands, and the crabbing, the shrimping, and the fishing in the surrounding areas. Please do not change the protection, the cultural protection overlay. Thank you.
Thank you. Lily Harris.
Good evening to everyone. My name is Lily Harris. I reside, my address is P.O. Box
1543.
We need that laugh. 1543 St. Helena Island, South Carolina. And my comments were in regards to Pine Island and St. Helenaville, but the whole subject changed this evening. So what I just wanted to say is, I'm not an attorney or anything, but that yellow portion that was highlighted, it seemed to me that it was in favor of these developers. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Bernie Wright.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Good afternoon.
First, I want to give you a petition that states, tell Beaufort County to deny golf course and resort historic St. Helena, and it has 3,556.
You want to take that? Yeah, I can take it. Thank you. Now, what was that number? 35? 30?
3,556.
3,256.
Okay. Thank you. I'll try to make mine brief. Sir, my name is Bernie L. Wright. I'm representing Penn Center. I'm the executive director there at present. We at 16 Penn Center, Penn Circle West off of Land's End Road. St. Helena is a very unique and distinguished place. It is where 55 plantations where 10,000 enslaved Africans worked to produce rice, cotton, and indigo. That's in the 1800s. After that, these 10,000 enslaved people were freed before the Emancipation Proclamation. And then, coming along, there was established the Penn School. It started in April of 1862. And then next, we had the Port Royal Experiment, right around the same year, very historical. And then coming after that, we had literally, well, actually, before the Port Royal Experiment, we had 10,000 enslaved people being freed prior to the Emancipation Proclamation, and then we had the Port Royal Experiment, and so on and on. Today, and right now, presently, we encounter at Penn Center hundreds of people coming in from all over our nation, but they enjoy and the experience at Penn Center. to enjoy the experience at St. Helena Island, and they come here to see how we are preserving and the preservation of this history is taking place. So we want to encourage everybody in this room to preserve this history because it's the envy of many across this nation. And so we want to say to all of us, let's protect, preserve these treasures that is the envy of many across our nation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I have next Janet McCauley. On to pass, Janet. Thank you. Stephen Murray. Stephen Murray. Mayor Murray, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. First, I want to wish you a happy new year and thank you for your very important volunteer service on behalf of Beaufort County. It's very important work. I am the mayor of the city of Beaufort. And first I'll say I believe county staff, specifically county legal, is very sincere on the legal concern. A project that's being proposed of this magnitude justifies the development industry spending a few $100,000 and burning through a few $100,000 of taxpayer money to challenge the project. And so that is a legitimate concern. And I think they shouldn't be chastised for looking out for taxpayer resource. That being said, I disagree with the mechanism that they are proposing to protect the CPO in using the development agreements. If you go back to the very first Beaufort County Comprehensive Plan and the City of Beaufort's Comprehensive Plan, there was a unanimous agreement that we wanted to preserve about 65% approximately land area to be rural in northern Beaufort County. Very different from our neighbors south of the Broad. If you fast forward to 2008 to the Northern Regional Plan, we reinforced that position and that we had to work diligently to encourage infill development in our existing urban areas while working tirelessly to reduce development and preserve our rural greenbelt. St. Helena being one of the most remarkable parts of our rural greenbelt. Fast forward to 2017, the Ladies Island Plan, again, unanimously adopted by Beaufort County Council, by Beaufort City Council, that called for a reduction in development densities across the Sea Islands, Ladies Island specifically, because it's no surprise for anybody who lives on the Sea Islands, especially Ladies Island, the traffic and transportation infrastructure issues that we're struggling with today. Development agreements, especially these legacy development agreements, are tremendously difficult for us to manage, for us to control, and so giving further permission for development agreements to be created that will, I think, tie the hands of future planning commissions, of future councils, of future staff is not the right mechanism. So I'm excited about the standing up of the CPO committee. I think staff has the right intentions, and so I would encourage a denial of this request. But a lot of these great people in the room, a lot of the professionals that we have, get around the table, figure out how we can provide not only protections for what we have today, but how we can provide greater protections. And I would remind you that thanks to the overwhelming support of voters, we now have $100 million plus another $15 million in rural critical lands. I think that's right, Kristen? 15 or 5? 15. We had $115 million of taxpayer money to do rural and critical preservation work with. And I would suggest that this might be one of the first projects that we approach the property owners with to see about how we preserve it. And so again, thank you for your time tonight and very important work. Happy New Year.
Thank you, Mayor Murray. I'm not sure I'll pronounce this right. It looks like Tim Joy, that place, 8 Marsh Harbor Drive.
Yep, I come here, I'm going to talk anyway. I came here, I've been here 15 years. I am an environmental advocate. I do lobbying as a volunteer for the Citizens Climate Lobby with Congress. I am here because of this history. This is what attracted me. If we let it go, it's gone. It's never coming back. It's unique, it's unusual, it's ecologically and culturally really important. If we cannot honor these things, we are lost. We don't know who we are or where we are. Any high-end development in a place of a range of financial capacity and ways of going will change everything. The best people can come into those places, but it's still not what it was. We've got a lot left here to take care of. Let's take care of it. You know, we talk about taxpayer money. There are, thousands of people who want to do this. And I, for one, would fork over my savings to have a nice legal battle and take a long time. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks to all of you who have spoken so far. Thank you so much.
Mr. Michael Blake Stevenson, I believe. Michael Blake Stevenson? He's left?
They say left.
All right. I will probably pronounce this wrong, but it looks like Najma Thomas.
Gold star for you, sir, and I yield to the Queen.
That was the right pronunciation?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Ty O'Farrell.
Hello, how are y'all? So I'm not used to this for everybody staying here, so I'm a little nervous, so please bear with me. My name's Ty O'Farrell. I'm at 112 Caper Street, Beaufort, South Carolina, 29902. I own about 20 acres on the main road that they want to develop off Tom Fripp Road. And I just, I'm from St. Helena, Fripp Point Road. And so I grew up, yes ma'am, thank you. So I grew up kayaking across Pine Island at some of the most pristine waterways that you can ever see. Across from Pine Island, you see Morgan Island, which contains 5,000 reese monkeys on it. You have just absolutely gorgeous resources. My main concern that I've seen today, and I just found out about what was going to happen yesterday, was just the lack of communication. The fact that the county and this developer has been doing things behind the scenes is just appalling to me. I'm in the insurance business, and I talk to people, whether it be from Defusky, Hilton Head, Bluffton, Okatee. I talk to about 50 people a day. And when I found out about this yesterday, I talked to every single person that I talked to on the phone or that came into my office. Had a county councilman actually come to my office randomly and ask about it. Not one person in the last 2 days, 100 people, want anything to do with this. So I don't know y'all's role in this. I don't know his role in this. But I just want everybody to know that the younger generation in Beaufort County does not want this. And what the mayor, who's our mayor? I'm sorry, sorry. Like I said, I don't know what goes on. I've got young kids. I'm just busy. After this, me and my wife are going to go put them to bed, so I appreciate everybody working with me. But I think that turning that to a state park or a county park is the most ingenious thing that we can possibly do. I will call Columbia tomorrow because the company I work for is heavily involved in Columbia and talk to people in Columbia that are in important roles there if they're willing to listen. But I guess I got a minute. So this is all new. Like I said, this is all different. But I just want to say thank y'all. I know this is very difficult. Miss Queen, that's amazing. That was awesome. And I know you got a tough job too, so I understand that. But I just want everybody to know, county commissioners, everybody, that the younger generation in Beaufort County, not just St. Helena, Beaufort County doesn't want it, because ultimately in 30 years, we're going to be the ones that have to deal with this. So thank you. And I'm going to go put the kids to bed now. So everybody have a good night.
Thank you. Pam Baxley. Pam Baxley. Oh, here she comes.
I'll try not to get emotional about this. Pam Baxter, 12 Red Tip Road. I raised my children on St. Helena on 20 acres. My children grew up with their aunts and uncles, Village Creek, and on Pine Island, fishing, shrimping, crabbing. My 20 acres, before I went to work, my youngest started school, I put up corn, I put up okra, I put up collards, squash, all kinds of vegetables. Mr. Majors across the street, Mr. Bowles down the road, all taught me how to do this. Being a military brat, I found heaven. I bought my land when I was 19 years old. I am here on behalf of my children and my grandchildren who make that trek out to family that still lives there, my nieces and nephews. We could walk down the road, the Lamo Road. We'd go down and see our neighbors. We cross the streets on Fripp Point. We cannot lose the ability to do that. Whether it's 300 houses or 500 houses, when there's docks out there, they're going to poison the creeks. You can't do anymore. We've got Natal. Great. We've got Fripp docks. We have enough. We seen the purpose 30-some years ago to recognize that. To the Harper and the Hanners, who currently own that property at Pine Island, where I spent many summers, days out there, did they object to being in this CP, or whatever you want to call it, because like I said, I'm getting nervous. CPO. They didn't object when that 700 acres was put in that. And I promise you, very smart, very wonderful people. Bought my first 10 acres from them. So if they withdraw that, if they're allowed to withdraw that, 700 whatever acres, it is detrimental to people who live around that area, both roads. They'll eventually have to do it. The water and sewer lines, because they're not going to tap into the aquifer no more. But we do need to listen to the county. Y'all need to work something out, because I do know from fact, if we don't plug holes, no golf courses, we will have a lawsuit on our hands. And I've seen it done on Hilton Head, where they have kicked things to the side. Hilton Head transfer fees end in 2024 because a lawsuit from Horry County challenged, why can they do it and we can't? Why can this happen and we can't? The settlement to that lawsuit was Hilton Head can no longer collect a transfer fee starting in 2024. For us to ignore and not work with the county attorneys is very foolish, because I want to protect it. The history, my children's history, and the people who lived here prior to us. There's families, the Queen, these properties, the taxes will go up no matter what they tell you they won't. And those people will be taxed out of their homes. They'll be taxed and lose it on tax sales. Heirs property's gone in that area. Go check it out. Take a look of who owns those properties surrounding it.
Thank you. Susan Rose. Susan Rose. It's not here. All right. Ted Mamoons. Mamoons. Ted. Here he comes.
Good evening. I'm Ted Mamunis. I live on Fripp Point Road, and I look out at Pine Island and all the St. Helenaville Road going to it. In 1975, I got on a motorcycle and drove down looking for a better place to live than the cold upstate New York where I was. And I didn't see anything. I went Virginia, North Carolina, Upper South Carolina, Myrtle Beach, woohoo. I couldn't find any place that I wanted to live in until I got to St. Helena Island. And I went home and got my wife, and we moved on to 3 acres on Village Creek. And we lived in a little trailer for a long time and finally built a house. And I'm a come here too. I'm 47 years here, but it's a special place. And someone said, you know, well, how can you say that a resort hurts the cultural protection overlay? It's a cut, more cut, and more cut. Hilton Head didn't look like it looks now 47 years ago. It wasn't too bad. Now it's a horrible place. So you cannot have gated communities wherever you want them, golf courts wherever you want them, without crowding out the local people and without ruining the environment. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Chip Spears? Okay, thank you, Chip. Rose Walker? Robert New?
Good evening, and thank you for your service. And I know serving on a commission's not a lot of fun, and after tonight, probably less fun. I'm a little bit confused because I want you to vote no. It's critical you vote no, because what you're doing is, if you vote yes, you're opening the door to the developer. I mean, that's the language. It's the plain language. He's got more than 50 acres. What are you doing? Everybody in this room knows that if Pine Island is developed, it's the beginning of the end. Everybody knows. I'm confused. And attorneys come down from Boston. You have a developer come down from Boston. He threatens a lawsuit, and everybody shakes. You're going to have a lawsuit anyway. There's always lawsuits. What are you doing? You honestly, truly know in your hearts that you got to block it. Don't give him an opening to develop it with the argument that, oh, the language is vague and we're scared and we're going to be shivering in our feet. Don't do it. Please vote no.
Thank you, Darrell Orange?
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity. I'm Darrell Orridge, P.O. Box 134, St. Helena Island. I grew up over there. I've lived there most of my life. I do want to say that the county reconstituted recently the CPO District Committee, and I was selected to be a member of that committee. As Queen Quet stated, we did not get introduced to this text amendment. It was not introduced at all at that meeting. It was really, like she said, an introductory meeting. But more so, I want to talk about a process. If, in fact, we're going to make an amendment, or if we're going to actually make some changes at all, that district committee should be included. And heretofore, it has not been included. Thank you.
Thank you, Darrell. Thank you, Darrell. Chuck Newton?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. I'm Chuck Newton, Chairman of the Sea Island Coalition. You have to remember that the whole goal of the CPO was to protect land on St. Helena. That's the starting place. But confusion reigns. We've heard quotes, at least from county officials, saying this ain't going to happen. And we've heard, we see now a text amendment which appears to open the door. So what's really going on here? There's a timing issue which I think has created a level of distrust in what's going on here. And I think part of the reason this room is full is because of that. It seems to me there are easier solutions than a text amendment the way it's written. What's wrong with golf facilities of any kind? We don't have to specify 8 holes or 3 holes or 18 holes. And I say that as a golfer, by the way. But timing raises concerns. And I think the most concerning thing about the text amendment is the opportunity to develop development agreements. When you set up a system that provides for the the negotiation of a development agreement, you've given up the ghost about whether there should be any development. All we're talking about is how it should be done. You've already lost the battle. And I think requiring a development agreement simply opens the door, provides a precedent, and as I said in my letter to you all yesterday, it becomes the camel's nose in the tent. As simple as that. Now, Beaufort County, and I've worked closely with a lot of members of the staff here and the lawyers for 5-6 years now. I think Beaufort County does a lot of things right, and it certainly always says the right things. But while the spirit is willing, the flesh is weak. Beaufort County needs to step forward, commit to and believe in what it says, and have the courage and foresight to say no. It could start here tonight, and I hope you will. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Faith Rivers, James.
Good evening. My name is Faith Rivers James, and I serve as the Executive Director of the South Carolina Coastal Conservation League, with offices here in Charleston and here in Beaufort. I'm a native of Mount Pleasant, and so I know firsthand how sprawling development can impact the rural landscape and how it threatens our Gullah Geechee community preservation. Thank you for the opportunity to address this tonight. The Conservation League has worked with the Penn Center and the St. Helena community since the 1990s. We have always supported community-led efforts to conserve the land and to protect the precious culture of this special place. The Cultural Protection Overlay is the embodiment of this commitment. We urge you to reject any changes to the Cultural Protection Overlay that would allow a golf course on Pine Island and St. Helenaville. Pine Island is a forested 498-acre property with historically significant structures and high archaeological value. It is located within the heart of the Gullah Geechee Heritage Corridor. Under current law, the proposed golf course and resort is not an allowable use of this land. The proposed exception amendment would cancel the overlay's restrictions on large tracts of land. In order to protect these cultural assets and preserve the Gullah Geechee community, the overlay should not be weakened with exceptions. In fact, just last year, the county's comprehensive plan recommended strengthening the overlay to preserve the community. The proposed revision is not just a text amendment. This exception would drive a dagger straight into the heart of the culture the overlay was designed to protect. Opening St. Helena up to exceptions on this and every other 50-acre tract would expose more than 5,400 acres of land to gentrifying resorts, gated communities, and golf course development. This would mean less open space, increasing infrastructure demands, and higher residential property taxes for the current residents of St. Helena. This is the nexus of the CPO, holding residential property taxes as opposed to commercial uses that may be permitted. That is your nexus. The St. Helena community made a commitment and an informed choice to reject this type of development 20 years ago, and they have not changed their minds. Look around the room tonight, read the letters and comments that have been submitted, look through the thousands of signatures on the petitions. We urge you to do the right thing and reject this language that would destroy the protective overlay through the exception backdoor. Amending the overlay would run counter to the express will of the residents of St. Helena and the citizens of Beaufort County. Thank you.
Thank you. Sharon Holmes.
Good evening. My name is Sharon Holmes and my address is 151 Seaside Road. I concur with everything that was said tonight. I am a Binya, and I just would like y'all to know, I would like y'all to vote no against this, because I don't understand how we didn't know about it prior to today. I just found out about this today. And so everybody is saying this is just a last minute thing, and they're saying that I also suggest that to protect the county, protect the people of the island, that they come together with the CPO and not just add a text in there that nobody agree with for the developers in the future. And we should not just always jump to what may happen in the future, because you always threaten with being sued, even if you're a county or a small person. And so all I'm asking tonight for the committee to deny it and consider our culture. I am a Gullah Geechee. I binya and I gasteya.
Thank you. Thank you. Anthony Jones.
My name is Anthony Jones. I'm at 42 Robert and Clara Trail on St. Helena Island. The question was posed earlier, what effect would results or whatever do to the St. Helena community? It has a psychosocial effect. Right now, we got folks who get up at Old Dock 30, travel that road from St. Helena over to Hilton Head Island. Folks coming as far as Allendale, Old Dock 30, getting home Old Dock 30, and then we have troubled kids. Why? Because mom and daddy get up at Old Dock 30, they don't have time to mess with their kids or spend that quality time. They get home, they're too tired to be with the kids. And then the cycle starts all over again. Next thing you have is the infrastructure. How in the world, 500 houses, where are they going to travel? Right down the Lama Road. Narrow. So in order for you to accommodate those folks, you're going to have to move folks out. And guess what? Folks say, well, we're bringing in jobs. What kind of jobs? House cleaning, taking care of the golf course. But if the folks don't have a place to stay because of the taxes, where in the world are they going to live? Right now on Hilton Head, you got folks, all over, and that's a problem. A lack of affordable housing. You tax folks out here, where the folks gonna go? So it's more than, and yes, it's a cultural issue, but it's also an environmental issue. I was born and raised in Beaufort County. I remember going fishing behind the trestle. Every time you throw out a line, you got a catfish. Can you get a catfish now? 20 years. And not only that, the shrimp and stuff. Our environment is being affected by all of these things. And yet you have folks coming saying, we are the saviors. We're going to help y'all out. Yeah, we're going to move y'all out. My wife was going to be here also, but she's deferred. The thing of it is, folks, as what was mentioned before, if God is not making any more land, when we lose it, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Kristen Williams.
That was a perfect line to follow. My name's Kristen Williams. I'm the Executive Director of the Open Land Trust. Our address is 905 Charles Street, but we represent all of Beaufort County and 6 surrounding counties. We don't often appear before this body. Our job is to work with willing landowners to maximize the conservations on their property rather than increase its development and potential. We have had the privilege to work closely with Beaufort County and the community for the past 12 years as the contractor for the Rural and Critical Program. We are so proud to be part of a community that is known for its forward-thinking, conservation-centered planning. Our elected officials continue to show their commitment to conservation by putting forward land protection ballot measures, and voters continue to demonstrate their overwhelming support with 5 successful rural and critical land referendums and the newly passed green space penny. Our comprehensive plan and community-based zoning measures, like the cultural protection overlay, place a heavy emphasis on conserving our natural and cultural resources. The recommended amendment to the CPO that is being proposed tonight is both unexpected and contradictory to everything we know that Beaufort County stands for. When developers come to town, they often call our office, interested to learn about how conservation and development complement one another. Development and conservation can be achieved if done well and done in the right place. This is not one of those times. St. Helena is one of the last remaining sea islands on the East Coast with its identity and integrity intact. It has not yet been overrun by land speculators or inappropriate development that has displaced local people from their land. It is home to craftsmen and artists, local businesses, family farms, a national park, and 3,500 acres of protected land. We urge you to reject the text amendment that would exclude properties from the CPO and urge you to reject any other changes that would weaken the protections of this zoning overlay. The text amendment before you tonight is related to a development proposal for a golf course and gated community on Pine Island. St. Helena is not the right place for a golf course or a gated community. We've met with the developers, heard their vision, and toured the property. We further urge you to reject any request to consider this development proposal as it is in direct contradiction with the CPO. The developers cannot do what they are proposing without your permission. I'm going to be over 3, but I'll be under 4. The track record of golf courses in rural communities being of benefit to the community is abysmal. The track record of development agreements creating a better outcome for anyone other than the developer is equally low. St. Helena is a conservation priority for its agricultural, cultural, historical, and ecological significance. The property at the root of tonight's proposed text amendment, Pine Island, checks all of these boxes and deserves a conservation outcome. A development plan is not appropriate here. We will enthusiastically advocate for funding and support for the ultimate protection of Pine Island and St. Helenaville. However, tonight's request is about zoning. Sound zoning and comprehensive planning supports and encourages land conservation. Requests for additional entitlements outside the bounds of zoning drive up the eventual cost of land protection and can make conservation cost prohibitive. St. Helena residents have advocated for their community for decades, and we stand with them here tonight. Not only is a golf course not appropriate, a conservation outcome is deserved. Our current zoning helps provide that outcome. Our CPO should stand. Thank you very much for allowing comments and allowing everyone to speak tonight.
Thank you. Belinda Jones. Belinda Jones. Okay. Yeah, we'll go next. Marie Gibbs.
Good evening. Marie Gibbs, 1250 Seaside Road, St. Helena's Island, South Carolina. I'm here to read a letter from Mr. Emery Campbell. He states, "Dear Chairperson and members of the Commission, I was privileged to serve as Executive Director of Penn Center on St. Helena's Island for 22 years. During my tenure, the Commission and County Council respectively gave their wholeheartedly support adopting a Gullah Cultural Preservation Overlay District for St. Helena's Island. The bold act the county promoted St. Helena's Island model leadership for cultural and environmental protection. I believe that an overwhelming majority of the county residents support St. Helena's Island Overlay District that restricts commercial resort development. Visitors to our community yearn for a place and that preserve the natural cultural history of our county. Therefore, I urge you to hold fast to your bold leadership in refusing any request that will compromise the cultural and environmental overlay district of St. Helena's Island. Please let me know if I can give further information on the establishment of the overlay district. Thank you for your unyielding leadership. Sincerely, Emery Campbell, Executive Director Emeritus of Penn Center." If he was here, he would still be talking, but I'm sitting down.
Thank you very much. Amy Armstrong.
I'm going to pull this down because I think it's the only way y'all are going to be able to hear me. My name's Amy Armstrong, and I'm the director of the South Carolina Environmental Law Project. Here on behalf of the Coastal Conservation League. I'm also a lawyer. I've actually been a litigator for 20 years, so I know very well what it's like to be in the courtroom having to fight over language in a regulation or in a statute or something that is being challenged by a party, and have done it many, many times. And I would agree with you, Commissioner Henley, about the language of the CPO being very clear. I mean, it's a pretty simple and straightforward restrictions. There are 3 uses that are very clearly prohibited, and what I what I heard this evening from planning staff was what we call in my field legal gymnastics. A lot of legal gymnastics to explain the who's and whys and why we can't enforce this and why there's going to be a challenge. Well, it's been 20 years and there hasn't been a challenge to the CPO yet. But even if there were a problem with the language in the CPO, this text amendment doesn't change the language of the restrictions. Those restrictions are still right there. It just adds more language. So if there really is a problem with the language, then change the restrictions to make them more clear. I heard somebody else suggest this evening, if the golf course, 8-hole golf course is a problem, then let's not allow any golf courses. That's a decision that the CPO commission should be tasked with right now. And this is really kind of preempting that really important work of people like Queen Quet that have been serving for so long in these capacities to really be able to guide what St. Helena looks like. Because what really the problem with the proposed text amendment is that it adds language and it doesn't fix any of the problems with the existing language. And so what you're doing is allowing additional uses that are currently prohibited. Now, we heard a lot, and I think we heard a lot addressing some of the concerns that were raised by, I'm running out of time, by the staff from the community, and I'm sure there's a lot when the CPO was initially enacted about the stakeholder process, how they decided that these particular restrictions would actually do all of the things that the CPO is designed to do, would effectuate the intent and purpose, and that's why they were ultimately passed by the county. I think it's really important. I want to just take a couple more seconds because I don't know if staff has looked at the implications of this particular text amendment, but I've looked at it, and there are 40 parcels on St. Helena Island that are larger than 50 acres. And of those 40 parcels total together are 5,600 acres of land that now would be exempt from those 3 land uses, and that could all have development agreements and have all of these things that the CPO is designed to protect. And so let's not rip out the heart and soul of the CPO, and I urge you to deny this text amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Wendy Zara.
Good evening. My name is Wendy Zara, and I live at 1012 14th Street in Port Royal. I've lived here for more than 30 years. I was very involved in the original comp plan and zoning ordinances. I lived in Sheldon at the time, and we had a lot of common concerns with the residents of St. Helena, so I remember very well when the CPO was originally established. And I think that we really owe respect to that community that worked so hard and is continuing to work so hard at keeping their community and their heritage and the environment the way they choose it to be. Please don't allow the text amendment. I also, in that period of time, have watched lots of development agreements between the county and developers, the city and developers, Port Royal and development. The first thing about a development agreement is the public is not involved. It's a contract between the developer and whichever government they're petitioning. So there is no public involvement. Probably when it goes to be read by whichever government body it is, you get to go to the public hearing, but the contract's already written, it's done. I agree with Mayor Murray, this is a perfect opportunity to use some of that $100 million that the voters just voted for to acquire land and preserve it. If you think about this parcel in particular, there's no sewer out there. Highland, what's the highest thing there, maybe 30 feet? We have rising sea level, and with rising sea level goes rising groundwater. You're gonna put it on septic tanks? How about all the trucks that are gonna carry the stuff back and forth for however many years that takes? This is a perfect opportunity, and I know you're not ruling on whether they can preserve it or not, but this is the perfect opportunity to actually preserve this parcel that should be preserved in the community. And again, I really want to congratulate the St. Helena community for the hard work they have done on protecting their community. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Reynolds Green. Sarah Reynolds Green.
She's in another room, they said. Eric? Yeah. Let's go.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us all here today. I'm going to be brief. I wrote something, so I won't scatter myself, but I just want to say a couple points because everyone has said so much that was so eloquent, and it is the point that we're making. We do not want the development. We do not want it. It's not necessary. It's not needed. That pristine island can be used for something that all of us can enjoy, and not just a few. Thank you.
Inez Miller.
Good evening, everyone. Inez Miller, 184 Saxonville Road, St. Helena Island, South Carolina. I'd like to give you a little history about this Pine Island in St. Helenaville. This is excerpts from Tom's B. Journal referencing St. Helenaville. Each excerpt gives you a little better look into St. Helenaville and who occupied it. This is the history. I'm learning about it now myself, thanks to two people that are friends of mine. St. Helenaville and Pine Island indeed had a plantation with enslaved Black people. It was also a summer retreat for the 50-plus enslavers on St. Helena and surrounding areas. It had multiple schools and stores and was even a major port for cotton, schooners, and businesses as far as Edisto and Charleston. The main crop grown was Sea Island cotton, and freedmen's left Charleston and Edisto and settled in St. Helenaville. Two roads traverse the island, one running southwesterly from St. Helenaville on a pine bluff overlooking St. Helena Sound. The others running more westerly from Coffin's Point, about 2 miles below the village. A fork of Land's End Road, or Church Road, as the upper more northerly road was called, led west to the Ladies Island Ferry. The lower road, called Seaside Road, crossed the Rich, Coffin, Fripp, and Jenkins lands before reaching Tom B. and Land's End. These sands roads with intervals of wooden causeways all over tidal drains and marshes connected the plantation to one another and to the institution which serviced white society, the churches, general stores, agricultural society, large muster houses, and villages on St. Helenaville, with its wharf, sand beach, summer mansions, parsonage, and small boarding schools. After Chaplin lost the first group of slaves, he went on living as extravagantly as before. A child of a great agricultural depression, he inherited its faultism, but not its parsimony. That was his undoing. Several times whole chunks of his estate fell by the wayside like the bluff on St. Helenaville, washing into the sea. Still, he was able to live richly by the standards of any other American of his time, with the exception, perhaps, of the man he looked up to, the large planters of the Sea Island, who prospered like Midas in the second golden age of cotton. The question of undue influence brought to bear against her to execute the deeds was swiftly disposed of. Daniel P. Jenkins, chaplain, second cousin, and on his mother's side, and first cousin to co-trustee Daniel T. Jenkins, gave the only testimony, he said, that he and his brother, Dr. William Jenkins, had witnessed the signing of 3 deeds to Thomas and Saxby Chaplain, and one deed.
Could you bring to assembly, respectfully bring to assembly?
Okay. Please vote no for this. It's crucial to our future and our children's future. Make a suggestion that they donate the land to Penn Center, where artifacts are, and Laura Town taught enslaved people how to prosper. Thank you.
Sally Mays?
Hi. You guys having fun here tonight, huh?
Sure.
Well, I've been a citizen of St. Helens Island for more than 2 decades. I'm Sally Mays. I live in Delamo, and I'm proud to be a St. Helena resident. What I want to tell, I agree with Queen Quet. I'm with her, with Steve Murray, governor, mayor, sorry. I'm hoping, always hoping. Yeah. My former student. What I want to do, though, is sort of remind you of what you already know. The job of government is to protect people and property. We be's people, aren't we? Are we people? Are we these people? All right. We be's people, and I think we spoke very clearly that we want our island protected, and we hope when you have the opportunity to send this information on up to yet the next committee, that you will make it clear to them. We want 100% total ironclad protection for our island. What I'd like to do, instead of reiterating what all these people are talking about, I'd like to talk to you about a bird, a really ancient bird. It's been here forever, but a piece at a time, this bird has been losing feathers. It's been plucked almost to death. But she's still with us, and she can still be revived. Her golden egg is pretty tarnished, pretty mushed up, not nice looking anymore. But that golden egg laid by that goose can be shined up and made glorious again, as can that goose that laid that golden egg. St. Helena Island is the golden egg. Let us have it. Thank you.
Thank you. John Gunn?
Good evening. Just a few thoughts about the original agenda had 2 items on it. The first involved 1 acre of land, had 4-page memo from the planning staff, and about 27 pages of backup material, if I counted correctly. The item that stayed on the agenda covers 64 square miles, changes the 2040 plan, and changes the CPO that was put in place 22 years ago. It had a 1-page memo from staff with no backup material. Why 50 acres? Why not 25? Why not 75? Why not 100? What's highland? Apparently we learned tonight it's not wetland. There were no maps. There were no demographic information like in the plan. There's simply no critical, credible analysis. None.
64 square miles is about 40,000 acres, and 50 is less than 1/100th% of the CPO. Why not 1% at 500 acres or 1,000 acres and get covered 2%? We heard about you can do anything. Well, it's already zoned for T2, T3 something, and that, I imagine, prohibits a mall. I think, I don't know, planning should have told us in the critical analysis what's really involved here. Council said, if we change it, and the words I got were, no legal claim can be made. Question to legal is, will they guarantee if we change it, no legal claim can be made, there will never be a lawsuit, and that the CPO is impenetrable? Ask legal that question and get their opinion there. Admin said this can't be tabled. I thought the commission had legal counsel, and they made decisions about the legality or the form or the process, not an administrator. And so this really doesn't deserve a recommendation, but rather a strong and ringing denial. There is a lack of transparency, there is a lack of respect for the process, and the overly broad language that was inserted was essentially found to be faulty on the very first question of a member from this committee. This doesn't deserve a hearing because it is so poorly put together. This should just be denied and the zone protected. Let's take our chances and fight it out, because I think at the end of the day, you'll be victorious.
Stroud Armstrong? Stroud Armstrong? Did somebody knock on that door? Knock on the door. Oh, here he comes. Here he comes. We've got him.
Hi, my name's Stroud Armstrong. I'm the son of Reed Armstrong, and I was brought here I live on 309 Tom Fripp Road, St. Helena Island. I'm just proud to be here and proud to see the citizens all rallied together. I think you've got a real gem. I've been around the world since I grew up here, and I've come back to St. Helena. I brought my wife here. She said she didn't want to live in my father's house, but once she came here, she said she never wants to leave here. We haven't really come out from the property ever since we've been here 3 years ago. But this meeting was a lot of reason for us to get up and come on down here. And I really think that y'all have a special gym on St. Helena. I don't want everybody to know about it. But the people, the culture, it's really irreplaceable. And the environment, you can't get that back. And I just want to say that I'd love to see this preserved and the cultural integrity maintained. Thank you all.
Thank you. Lottie Chaplin? Lottie Chaplin, is she in the other room, perhaps?
It says she gone.
All right. All right, Tom Donahue? Good evening.
Thank you for this opportunity, y'all. And not much for speaking in front of people, but it's two things I want to touch base on. I've lived here 4 years, came down from Virginia. I've been traveling. I've lived in an awful lot of places in the Southeast since about 1978. But anyway, since I moved to St. Helena, I have to say that some of the most wonderful, loving encounters with people in my life have been with the Gullah Geechee people. And St. Helena is their place. There's no place like it in this country that I know of. And respect and protection for their way of life. The uniqueness just blows my mind. And if the love that these people have in their hearts could be spread throughout this country, we'd be living in a different world today. And, you know, first of all, I respect that. Second of all, I'm an environmentalist, and I've spent my life making money off the environment, mostly fishing. And I carry a lot of guilt with me because I'm a late stage baby boomer, and I've done my share to destroy our environments where they are. Mother Nature's doing her thing, but when I fish, I live in Delamo, and when I go out Eddings Point Creek and turn right and go down to the mouth of Village Creek, that's the only place I can fish where I don't see houses, docks everywhere. You know, it's the pollution, just the thought of a golf course. I have one question I would like to ask the developer to his face. I've never been a golfer. I've asked God, if there's no fish left to catch, might I, you know, try swinging a golf club one time. But, you know, I'll tell you, I think there's baby boomers that golf, and the generation after us probably golfs. But I think once you start getting into millennials, that I'd really like to know the numbers of those people that golf. So building a golf course, especially when there's still plenty of them, there's a few of them on this end of the county. If they really want to golf that bad, go down to Hilton Head where this county has already allowed this destruction to take place. You know, so I don't know. To me, it's all about this, and we need to take care of each other. And I just don't believe it's a good idea. I live right next to where all that construction would be going on, and what it would do to what I still consider to be a fairly pristine environment for us there. And, you know, I want to do everything in my power to protect it, and standing up against this is the best I can do for now. So,
I have Mr. Bernie Wright again, but I think somebody spoke. Arnold Brown.
Good evening. My name is Arnold Brown, and my address is 127 Dr. Martin Luther King Drive on St. Helena Island. I almost grew up on the Penn Center campus. I want to say that perception is reality. Okay, perception is reality. And the perception that's out there, I believe the perception out there right now that's growing is mistrust. And because there's a fiduciary, everyone has a fiduciary responsibility. And what I've heard here tonight, the fiduciary responsibility seems to lie with the developer. I've heard if I was a developer, if I was in a courtroom, the case that was presented would be the case presented by a developer. But I didn't hear anything from employees saying, this is what we need to do, this is what we recommend to fight any developer that comes in the future. Once you open that can of worms, open the door, you set a precedent, and everybody else is going to drive through it. Now, that's just the way it is. The process has been steamrolled, put in at the last minute. As far as business days of the month, December was the shortest time. We had to jump through hoops to get organized to fight this. Public trust, as I said, has been violated deliberately, I believe, by holding back information to members of citizens of St. Helena Island. There was a staff meeting that was held, a staff review meeting that was held here on this campus on November 16th at 9:30 in the morning, and I have a copy of the minutes. On the agenda was Pine Island zoning. The meeting was adjourned, and then they went into a meeting to talk about Pine Island zoning. I want to give you a copy of this. And the developer was in the meeting, but the developer was allowed to stay and the public, other members of the public, had to leave. That's why there's a mistrust. It seems that are we agents of the developer? Who's an agent of the developer? The developer could have been here tonight. I wish he was here tonight. I've met him. I have his phone number. He should have been here tonight to hear the discussion that's going on. So I'm very disappointed that he's not here. And I'm disappointed that I ran out of time. So I'd like to pass this out to you. But I was very concerned that how can you have a private meeting about a public issue? Citizens of the island were asked to leave, yet the developer could stay.
Chris, could you just pass them out? Thanks, Mr. Brown. Thank you. Dr. Gibbs. Ed Atkins. Ed Atkins. Mr. Atkins? No. Carolyn Jabali? I probably butchered that, didn't I? Jabali.
Good evening. Thank you so much for all that you all do. I'm Carolyn Jabali. I live on 239 Sea Pines Drive, the very end of St. Helena. I live on the very end of St. Helena Island. I have the most amazing view of what goes on out in St. Helena Sound. And I came to say that we want growth by choice, not by chance. And I have to applaud the Gullah Geechee community and their insight and their foresight to do this 20 years ago and put St. Helena into restrictive overlays, covenant, whatever. The comprehensive plan clearly was the fulfillment of this, and you meant it when you put these cultural overlays and protections on this island. I've been coming here 30 years. I fought vehemently about the boneyard at Hunting Island. It was heartbreaking. So some things have already changed, but I have to say, since the comprehensive plan is passed as an ordinance and all of its contents are passed as an ordinance, it has the weight of law. Stick to your guns. Stay with it. These people had insight and they got it done, and we just need to stay on course. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. David Smith. David Smith. Okay. Pristine Alexander.
Hi everyone, my name is Pristine Alexander, and thank you all for allowing me to speak. I was born and raised on St. Helena Island. My grandmother and I used to go and fish and catch crab right there next to Ebenezer Baptist Church. I've been gone for 35 years, but it was with anticipation that I returned to St. Helena Island. I'm proud of my home. I've been to Japan, I've been to Iceland, and with all of that, and I've been to lots of places in the U.S., but nothing compared to St. Helena Island. So when I got the opportunity to return earlier than scheduled, because it's always been my plan to return to St. Helena Island, I came, and I'm here to stay. And I love my home. There's a lot of history here. And I think we need to preserve that history. We have something that a lot of people in the U.S. do not have. And I think we need to treasure it. There is a saying in a lot of states out there that St. Helena Island is for sale. And I don't mean that literally, but I do mean it literally. They're out there trying to get their hands on property on St. Helena Island, and it won't be the same. When you look at Hilton Head Island, it didn't start out the way that it is. Now it's a sprawl, and there is probably nothing that those people that lived there years ago recognize. And the Gullah Geechee community on Hilton Head are fighting like all get out to keep what they have. And if we're not careful, we are going to end up exactly where they are. And I don't want that. I really don't want that. This is a beautiful place. It's a great community. And there is so much that we have to give. And I think that a golf course, a resort, none of those things are what we need here. So I really, really, really would applaud you all and just stick to, those of you who agree this isn't what we need, stick to your guns and say, we don't need this. We need to protect those people on St. Helena Island. We need to protect their culture. We need to protect their history. And that's all I have to say. Oh, and by the way, my address is 47 Queens Road, St. Helena Island. Thank you.
Thank you. David Smith? Okay, sure. Thank you. Come on up.
My name is David Smith. I'm a native-born South Carolinian. I have lived the majority of my adult life on St. Helena Island, the same acreage. I'm just up the creek from Pine Island, so anything that affects Pine Island affects me and my life. I strongly oppose any modification to the CPO. And I actually wrote that when I thought that, from what I read earlier, that what the developer wanted was to be exempt from the CPO. But here tonight that they're wanting to change it or something, it's just so confusing. I felt like the county administrator was an agent of the developer, not my employee. And the rest of us here is employee. I question, for the lawyers in the crowd, Q bono, who benefits from this? If you allow a gated community and a golf course on, it's actually a very narrow strip of land. There are tidal creeks on both sides of it. It goes to, it's a high bluff, very high at Pine Island, which is eroding away, which somebody builds there, then they're going to want all kinds of variances to ordinance to build seawalls and things. You take a look at Pine Island and see how unsuitable it and the land itself are. I'm getting off track here. It would appear that the only beneficiaries of this, allowing this development, is a Boston developer. Certainly not the culture and residents of St. Helena Island. Some who have grandfathers, parents, grandfathers, great-grandfathers, great-great-grandfathers that have lived here. I'm sure that they're not happy to have an outsider from Boston come in and change things. Frequently county council comes to us on election time and they want to get a referendum for more taxes, to put a penny sales tax or whatever, to buy green spaces. We have an excellent green space right here on St. Helena. Why don't we concentrate on preserving that, preserving Pine Island and St. Helenaville? This makes no sense to me. Maybe it makes sense to a politician. Maybe it makes sense to bureaucrats and county council. As a long-term resident of St. Helena Island, it makes no sense to me. Let's see. And also, in addition to the cultural considerations that this large development would bring, is the major impacts on the traffic down two very narrow roads, Delamo Road and Tom Fripp Road.
Then, respectfully, could you bring your comments to a summary?
Sure. That's probably it. This really stinks.
Okay. David Williams. David Williams. All right. Travis Stewart. Travis Stewart. Ah, okay.
So I pretty much, my name is Travis Stewart, and I live on St. Helena at 375 Frick Point Road. And I almost was just going to defer to everybody that's done such a beautiful job of speaking more heartfelt and knowledgeably than I ever could. But I'm one of those darn northerners that fell into St. Helena from North Carolina. And I have run from development for the last 40 years of my life as a previous citizen in the Charlotte area. You might know what I mean. So I'm particularly sensitive. I'm a good old country girl. You know, I came down here with my horse looking for country, and then I learned how to fish and throw a cast net with the best of them. And I would love to be a part of the community that's been here. Y'all could have taught me better than the folks that taught me. But St. Helena is indeed something special. It's been a true heart and life changer for me and my family. And we'll fight whatever it means. I was really sort of surprised that this started with a conversation that should have been held behind closed doors, apparently. That was a shock to me, that I thought this was about something that was already proposed and had been talked about. Well, apparently it had been proposed and talked about, but not publicly. So when there was supposed to be this little conversation between the council and your legal folks, I was like, what is this? So I have seen it before, though. And I'm glad that people here were smart enough and are smart enough to understand that there are back doors to things. And I'll want y'all, like everyone else said, to be strong enough to understand and know that you got to stick to your guns. And we all have to continue to come out and support and be a part of whatever committee you need to help people understand how you can preserve not only your culture and your land, but your way of life. So I thank you very much, and I hope that soon we have an end to benefiting the few and destroying the many. So thank y'all for your time, and please let's say no to this amendment. Thank you.
Robert Hendricks. Robert Hendricks. No. Sarah Reno. Terry Ely Hawk. 327 Cottage Farm Road Drive.
She's not here.
Okay. Henry, wait, it looks like Henry A. Brandt. Okay.
Can y'all hear me okay? Is that good enough? Yeah. If I talk this close?
We can hear you.
All right. So, yeah, I'm Henry Brandt. I run a business here in Beaufort called Coastal Expeditions, and we're at 1928 Sea Island Parkway. We're over there in the commercial fishing village overlay, which is where we found ourselves as we were trying to kind of find the niche we fit into when we moved down to Beaufort. And there were some conditions that kind of had to be met before we actually decided to come to Beaufort. And one of them was we ended up getting this deal with SCPRT to do tours out of Hunting Island State Park and run a ferry service out to St. Philip's Island, and taking the Queen out there before, and many other folks. But also we want to make sure that before we decide to open a business in Beaufort that we found a niche that was appropriate for us to fill. And on St. Helena, we found that lovely commercial fishing village overlay. And But St. Helena Island, what appealed to us was really not since I was a boy had I seen a sea island that was so rural. I'm born in Savannah, and I'd spent most of my life living in Charleston. And then to come to Beaufort, where you run through this rural sea island, and then you dump onto an undeveloped barrier island, and you don't see that too often anymore. That's kind of a rare resource. And I've done that paddle from Eddings Point and stopped, and I've eaten lunch right there on the beach of Pine Island, sitting there staring at Morgan and St. Helena Sound. And it sits, just right there at the mouth of one of the most pristine estuaries in the country, the Ace Basin. And I think in our accomplishment to try and create that green belt, down the South Carolina coastline, I think preserving land like Pine Island is essential, but more importantly, for the goal of preservation. Since I got here, it's been one of the things that's impressed me about St. Helena Island was how rich and just steeped in Gullah culture it was, and that somehow St. Helena Island had, or Beaufort had managed to maintain that. And I think that that's really the main focus, is to continue that trend and to make sure that whatever we're doing the best for the Gullah Geechee culture on St. Helena. And if it's enough for the Gullah Geechee community, I've heard the Open Land Trust, I've heard SCCL, I've heard Southern Environmental Law, and if they're all saying it's the move, then it's the move. So thank you so much, y'all. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Denise Parsick. Denise Parsick.
What a night, huh?
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Denise Parsick. I live at 1819 Royal Palms Road in Port Royal. I am here as a commissioner. I'm a commissioner with the Beaufort Soil and Water Conservation District. And our mission is to protect, promote, and preserve the natural resources of Beaufort County. And we are especially concerned about St. Helena Island. It has come to our attention that there are even some minor mining issues there that have been brought to the attention of County Council, because whether you are aware or not, but there's already saltwater intrusion on St. Helena Island. It's not going away. And we're called the Low Country. And it's obvious in this part of the world that we're discussing today that we don't need to be bringing 39,000 trucks of dirt like we did on Ladies Island. The other thing is, I forgot the other thing. The other thing.
It's all right, take your time.
No. Oh, I know. If you don't believe, you might not believe in climate change, but you've got to recognize that there is sea level rise. And if you don't believe in erosion, then you haven't been on Harbor Island or Hunting Island. And probably even, the area that we're talking about. It's there, it's happening, and we're just concerned. So hopefully you'll take all these environmental changes that are happening in our area to heart. And if you don't say no, then you're saying goodbye agriculture, goodbye aquaculture. There's not going to be any more of that at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Victoria Smalls.
Good evening, Chairman and Commissioners. I stand here proudly, Victoria Smalls, P.O. Box 429, St. Helena Island. I am a native of Tomfret, Delamo, Eddings Point, and a descendant of St. Helenaville. We have ancestral land, about 20 acres that we've worked the land. We've lived off the water, respectively, and I'm so very happy to be able to be here on behalf of the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Corridor National Heritage Area, where I serve as the executive director. And I also am working on behalf of our federal commission. Our island is significant, and not just to the Gullah Geechee people, but to the Kasaba, the Yamasee, and other native tribes, to the world. When people think of an epicenter for Gullah Geechee culture, St. Helena Island is one of the first, if not the only, mentioned as the epicenter for the culture. The Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Corridor is a national heritage area established by the United States Congress in 2006, Public Law 109-338, and we recently were reauthorized as the commission through 2037, and President Biden just signed another reauthorization for our national heritage area today. We are here to recognize our unique culture for the Gullah Geechee people who have traditionally resided in the coastal areas and sea islands of North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. The United States Department of the Interior's National Park Service published several findings in the Low Country Gullah Cultural Special Resource Study and Final Environmental Impact Statement published by the National Park Service in 2005, and it stated resorts, golf courses, and coastal suburban development on islands led to steadily increasing property values, skyrocketing taxes, and forced migration. You can attest to this as an inaugural commissioner to the Federal Commission. In addition, the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Management Plan, which you can also, yes, published by the National Park Service in 2012, acknowledged the importance of land and environment to the continuation of the Gullah Geechee people. St. Helena Island community has battled and protected itself against unabated and mounting threats continuously. How much more can we take? I want to end in stating the Gullah Geechee Corridor National Heritage Area is Federal Commission, Stand With Penn Center, the Gullah Geechee Nation, Coastal Conservation League, Beaufort Open Land Trust, Hilton Head Audubon Society, Savannah Archaeological Alliance, because there are significant archaeological findings on the site, which I'm concerned that have not been shared with the public. We also stand to preserve SC and the governor himself, Henry McMaster, against this. So please utilize the citizens, the expertise, knowledge of the citizens that have been assembled and appointed to serve on the CPO committee. If there are any other amendments or any dialogue that needs to happen, these citizens need to be heard. And I just want to say thank you for your time and your service to our community. We hope that you will listen to the community members and act accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. William Smith. William Smith.
Oh, how you doing, Commission? My name is William Smith. I'm also elected official in this county, and I appreciate you. I just want to thank you all for your services. What you do is definitely appreciated. And however, I just wanted to say, my first thing is I want to mention to you tonight is, I think that it's very concerning to have this conversation tonight and not have any attorneys on your behalf, this board. Because what I do know is that we're talking about lawsuits. Our county administrator have sued the ZOB, and they have sued other boards like yourselves. So I would be careful. Like they said, I would be careful of how I approach this without having an attorney. I'm just putting this as everybody putting out and everybody throwing things out there. I just want to let y'all know, and because like someone was standing in the room tonight, the legal gymnastics. So you protect yourselves too from the legal gymnastics, because there's one thing to bring it forward, but have it in black and white. That's something else. Because if I remember clearly, this conversation was talked about with this developer a year ago. I remember when even one of the county councilmen of our area, there was discussion with certain people in the community a year ago. So this same this same board that Queen Quet's talking about, and Mr. Orange, who said that they just assembled, why wouldn't they brought up months ago or a year ago when that conversation happened to start having this conversation? See, I ain't gonna come in. I ain't coming here with no food. I'm coming here with straight facts. I'm coming here with straight food for thought. straight, and anybody can test me on that. And I say to the community, we have to stop allowing. This is maybe about the second or third year, correct? We've been having this conversation up here, trying to fight for Pine Island in different areas in our community. The same way how the county administrator brought forward their approach or what they thought was great for the community and getting it, it sounded like they were talking for the developer, is what everyone, the consensus in the room was. It's the same way they could have brought forth when the county just had that $115 million referendum. The same way they could say, well, you know what, let's buy Pine Island. And let's give it to the lineages of the St. Helenaville, of Pine Island. Let's just not buy it and preserve it. Let's allow the lineages, let's find the lineages of this land and allow them to use it. Because see, it's too convenient when we find ourselves bringing up the black and brown and the Gullah culture, and we use it when it's convenient. It's time for county council to stop and come together and actually say, look here, if we're going to get it, because first off, that money only go to large tracts of land. So if we're going to be serious about it, then let's attest and show our worth, because also we got some COVID money too that I'm sure that that can be used for this too possibly. But I ain't gonna go there because I'm not an attorney. But anyways, I can almost bet you probably can use some of that money to buy this land. Let's stop pimping the Gullah culture of African American people and putting our money where our mouth is and actually getting things done. And it's a tough conversation. It's a tough spot to be in. But I ain't gonna come up here and waste your time. I'm coming here and bring you something that no one else brought you before. Facts. Then check out. And also, to sum it up, you gotta tell me, I'm gonna hold it right now. The question that you asked Mr. Kevin, and the question that our representative asked, they weren't disrespectful questions, staff. They were tough questions. And sometimes we have to ask tough sessions because God put particular people in particular places to ask particular questions. Keep doing what you're doing. Drive the ball up the middle. Good job.
I'm going to not be able to do this one justice, I'm afraid. Chief Seka Uete Hadago?
Chief Sekou.
Sekou.
Yes, Chief Sekou.
Pronounce that again, your whole name?
Sekou Holam Hachu Talami Yamase Hajo. Ani Miki Sekou Holam Hachu Talami Yamase Hajo. Miku Yamase. In my language, I am Chief Sekou of the Yamase Indian tribe. One of the very few voices that was spoken about, except for when she said our name tonight. I'm actually representative of the true landowners. See, because my people, 54 years ago, fought for everyone to be here. We were the first Coast Guards for this great state of South Carolina. We protected the colonists that came here. Not only did we do that, we fought for the Gullah people. We rescued the Gullah people. That culture, that heritage is intertwined with my people. The thing that my sister has been fighting for on behalf of all of us. I am a Yamasi. I'm not supposed to be here right now. But because we fought for all people, and we fought for our own survival, including the Gullah people, it's the reason why I'm here. We've stopped becoming known as Yamasi, we became known as Seminole, runaways. We ran from slave plantations trying to free our people, free the Gullah people. That corridor is our corridor as well. This heritage is our heritage as well, and we've been forgotten. My sister's been fighting this battle, and the Gullah people have been fighting this battle for a long time. But I got a call that said we need your people here to let the people know that this land originally is my people's land. And we've let people live here. We have not said anything. We've kept quiet because we understand that people, you, have the right to be where your ancestors also fought and died. I'm asking you to preserve what heritage and history is left of my people. Those archaeological finds are my people. That's our heritage. My children are here with me, and I bring them with me because they need to witness history and understand what we've been fighting for, what their ancestors fought for. I applaud everyone that has been here tonight, standing up for what is right, not even understanding that indigenous people were standing here listening to you all, appreciating your voices, thanking you, because your ancestors are speaking as well. But I want to say to you, this place, Beaufort County, was founded in 1769. 54 years prior to that, my people were fighting a war. It's called the Yamasee War of 1715. And before we fought that war, we fought the French war for the British. We fought against the Spaniards. We fought the great fight for anyone we believed in. This is something for us to fight again. I had to stop my people from coming in here at 1,000 for our voices to be heard. I said, my voice is enough. I'll speak on behalf of my people and the Gullah people that we stand with. So I ask you, when you make a decision, make that decision and think about the history that has been forgotten, the history that we are trying to preserve, and the people who died for all of us to enjoy this great land we call St. Helena Island today. I thank you.
Miss Jenkins, and I think it's Cynthia Jenkins.
Mr. Chairman, members of Planning Commission. Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, my name is Cynthia Jenkins, and I'm Executive Director of the Historic Beaufort Foundation. And I appreciate the work y'all are doing tonight and listening to all these comments. I've learned a lot. I've been doing this a long time, but I learned a lot tonight. One of the things that troubles me a great deal about this, first of all, we did send a letter, but I'm not going to talk about the letter because there were so many things said tonight that actually troubled me. Zoning establishes parameters for development. I've never met a developer in 48 years of doing historic preservation that thought they got enough, that what they were allowed to build or do was enough. If we don't locally establish strong zoning parameters, we will lose Beaufort County. We are fighting it every day for our architectural heritage, and we've got to continue that fight. Zoning is supposed to look at the land area and then apply the restrictive covenants on that land that suits it, that meets what's around it, that's part of the history of the land. I heard someone say tonight, and had to sort of laugh. Somebody tell me why a gated community, a golf course, or a resort would negatively affect St. Helena. How many golf courses, resorts, or gated communities were historically on St. Helena Island? None. Now, the first golf course in America was in Charleston. It was established in the early 18th century along Montague and George Streets. But to my knowledge, there was not a golf course ever built on St. Helena Island. And there certainly wasn't one in Beaufort County until the early 20th century. So we must make sure that when we have an ordinance that sets strict parameters, we respect it. We take time to study it. We don't timing. Somebody said something about timing tonight. Another thing I've learned in being an old lady is that all the big projects that gets presented to county boards, city boards, either the week of July the 4th or right around Christmas. Never fails. So it's also surprising to me that it took 2 hours and 30 minutes for anybody to mention prehistory and the significance of parts of St. Helena Island that I am told by much smarter historians than I am how very important some of those areas are to Native American history, and particularly St. Helenaville. Not one person tonight, nobody from the county, even mentioned the fact that Penn Center is a National Historic Landmark, one of the first 3 national landmarks established in South Carolina, that St. Helenaville is on the National Register of Historic Places as an archaeological site. The importance of what you decide tonight will affect the rest of St. Helena. And when I first came back to Beaufort 3 years ago, at least 50 people said, do not let Beaufort become Charleston. It is our responsibility to make sure that the next generation has a Beaufort County just like we get to enjoy and have enjoyed. So I ask you to deny this, send it back. If we have to study it, let's study it. And thank you for what you're doing and spending all this time tonight. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Robert's, I couldn't read the M. Robert Sample.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Robert Sample from St. Helena Island. My descendants have lived on St. Helena Island probably 180 plus years that I've been able to document. Mr. Chairman, what I'm about to say is some going to find blasphemous or even treasonous, but this year I'll be 50 years old, so I lived half of my life, and at this point I really don't care. Everybody is talking about, let me just say this, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, under the guise of conservation, conservationists convinced cultural preservationists on Hilton Head that industry was a bad thing for them, that it would destroy their way of life, they would pollute the rivers. Fast forward 60 years, those cultural preservationists, or the descendants of those cultural preservationists, are no longer there, and the rivers are polluted. Today, conservation-like organizations are convincing cultural preservationists using the same playbook, the same game plan, telling them that development and industry is bad for them. Mr. Chairman, I don't care if it's Seattle, Washington, I don't care if it's Boston, Massachusetts, I don't care if it's Harlem, New York, I don't care. Exclusionary zoning, conservation easements, and cultural overlay district, which is a fancy word for heritage zoning, has not worked in the best interest for indigenous people, poor whites, and black people. I don't care what part of the country that you implement these things. And that's documented. You can research that. That's not something that I'm saying. And I challenge anybody to challenge me on that. Okay? Most of us in this room will be dead and gone probably in the next 10, 20 years, but we will still have the same argument. We'll be having the same argument. And the population, the descendants of American slaves on St. Helena Island, the population numbers will be diminished because of this exclusionary zoning, these conservation easements, and this heritage or this cultural overlay district. Okay? The reason why people aren't up in arms about this is because, and I'm going to talk frankly, is because black people have implemented this and have basically shackled themselves with this type of zoning to their detriment. 10, 20, 30 years from now, we will be faced with this same problem and these same issues. Look at Guatemala Island near Charleston. 90% of it is under conservation. Where are the Gullah Geechee people of Guatemala Island? They're gone. You know why they're gone? Because conservation easement and this form of zoning is used as a planning tool. These people have shackled themselves to their detriment. Thank you.
Thank you. James Smalls. James Smalls.
First, I say good evening. Certainly want to thank you for listening to me.
Your name, James Smalls, yes?
James Smalls. I live at 31 MLK Drive, St. Helena Island, South Carolina. Been there for 75 years. I just want to say a few things. I came back home from Vietnam in 1969. I went to Hilton Head looking for a job before I went back in the military. Royal Pine was the only place all the way down on Royal Pine. It wasn't but Royal Pine. It used to have two beaches, Bradley Beach and St. Helena Beach, for blacks to go to. We used to ride the school bus on Easter Monday, go to the beach. No development, nothing. Then, from 1969 until now, ask those people from Hilton Head, Bluffton, Hardyville, what happened? Somebody got in, started a development, all those people, 90% of them are gone. Taxes, people sending checks in the mail, sign this check. I get them. We talked about it last week. People sending checks. You sign this check. Once you sign this check for $1,000 that they put on it, they got you. All right, they got your land. We can get your land. How we gonna get your land? We pay you cash right on delivery. You don't even have to say anything. We just pay you cash the same day. All kind of things. People calling continuously, trying to get on St. Helena Island. I raised up on Eddings Point, Tom Fripp, families. My family got 23 acres of land on St. Helena Island. And you asked me to give up that culture, to give up everything. We go on a place called Indian Hill. People still finding little arrowheads and different stuff there. But then you want to tell me you want to build a golf course over this. Well, it doesn't matter. We got people fighting to maintain their families' cemetery. Somebody come, let's push it up. I'm going to build me a house here. What happened? What happened? People don't care. If I'm living in California or wherever, I don't know. So what? I'm going to buy some land. I'm going to build me a golf course. What about those people in Tom Fripp? Where they going at? What you going to tell them to do? And the final thing I'll say before I sit down. I was in Saudi Arabia in the war. And they said, we're going to show a movie to the troops as a stand down a little bit before we go back out in the field. And guess who been on there? My grandmama doing a shout at Penn Center, and they got a movie showing the Gullah Geechee culture in Saudi Arabia. And you gonna tell me we're gonna come in and let somebody just come in, oh, we're gonna build a golf course here now? What? No. Thank you.
So that's an end to the comments. Thank you all for your comments and your input. Now I'm turning this over back to the commission for discussion, and any other comments you'd like to make before we take a vote? Hearing no comments, do I have a motion on this issue?
I make a motion to reject the changes proposed to the CPO.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second? All those, any discussion?
Chair, before we vote, I think what the motion should be more attuned to is whether you approve, recommend approval, or recommend not approval, not reject.
The wording?
Yes.
You want to restate that?
That's what I was gonna suggest also.
Okay, so my motion is to not approve the recommended changes to the CPO overlay district.
So what this board is doing here is recommending to county council whether you recommend the changes or not.
No, I said.
Yeah.
Or like that.
This gentleman is our attorney, the commission attorney.
Right, so the motion is to recommend not accepting the changes. Is that clear?
Are you all right with that?
As proposed by staff, I
As
think it
proposed
means.
by staff.
By the administration,
Or whatever.
as opposed by the administration.
Right, and I actually would reference, if I may, the text amendment proposed by staff, and instead maintain the language as it exists now.
Second. You had to re-amend it.
I'll second that. As amended? As amended.
So,
What's the motion?
You had a motion, was there a second
You have
to
to-
that motion?
Yeah.
What's the second to the motion?
And then she's attempting to amend that motion.
That motion, yeah, amend the motion. And there was,
She moved to amend it, and there was a second for that.
that's correct.
Okay, so you have to vote on the amendment and then the main motion.
That's, on the second amendment.
There's only one amendment. He moved to recommend.
To your amendment.
All
All right.
She moved to amend his recommendation.
All right, so we're voting on her
Voting on her
amendment
amendment.
before we get to the main amendment.
Correct.
Can we have
Is there any discussion regarding that?
I'll have to, I'm the newest guy on this commission, and I'll just have to say, given the depth of feeling and sentiment as expressed by all these folks that came here tonight, and given the seriousness and the apparent lack of homework on the part of our staff, I wish to express my disappointment and suggest that our staff be instructed to do a hell of a lot better job at digging into what we unearthed.
I got a comment on that. My reason for objecting this recommendation has nothing to do with staff. I think staff did what they believed was right. They saw what they perceived to be a problem. I want and expect staff to do that. My objection to this language has nothing to do with staff's effort, their work, or anything that they were involved with here. I think they did the right thing as they saw fit when they did it. I think I made very clear from the beginning why I am not supporting this amendment and this language. It's simply because we don't need it. I think that law as written has stood for 20 years and did what it was supposed to do for 20 years as the people who were involved in it back then and who approved it back then. I think once we start tinkering with this thing, you'll be here till the cows come home. You think it's late now at 9 o'clock at night? You'll be here forever once you start tinkering with this. So that's where I'm at. It's nothing to do with what I feel staff did or didn't do, and that's with no disrespect. But, you know, I know the effort that went into this, so I'm not, it's not a problem I have at all. I just think that we're best off. I think this satisfies the need, the purpose. I read the purpose, and I'm fine with it. I think it does what it's supposed to do.
There are further comments? I'd like to offer one comment. Several years ago, we started a very lengthy process in rebuilding the comprehensive plan. We learned very quickly that we had.
Mr. Chairman, you might need to move closer.
Several years ago, a lot of effort went into developing the 2040 comprehensive plan. We found out late in that process that we weren't getting enough information that would get the voice of all the people. We made a special effort to go out into the community because we've quickly found out the belief is you want to know what people think, go out and ask them. And so when I find out that there's been lack of communications on this very critical issue with the CPO committee, I wonder what's going on, why were they overlooked. Clearly, they were identified as a authoritative body in assigning people to the CPO committee, and as supported in the comprehensive plan. So I found that to not be acceptable behavior, that I would remand any further analysis back to the CPO committee and the appropriate officials in the county that can thoroughly look at this issue to the best interest of the people of the county. That was my comment. Any other comments? All right, we're voting on your amendment to the main amendment, which was to add in.
Mine was just simply to pin it down to say that, that we disapprove or do not approve of the text amendment proposed by staff.
We're not approving or disapproving anything.
Recommending, right, sorry. But my piece to add was that it was the text amendment, that I don't think Kevin, in fact, said the text amendment 3.4.50 proposed by staff, and instead maintain the language as is currently written.
Is everybody?
So she's adding.
I understand.
I'm just adding, I mean, I didn't actually intend to make it as an amendment.
Is it clear to everybody what's being requested?
No, I think you need to restate it in full and nice, concise, clear language. So his motion was to,
Not
just
recommend.
not recommend, and then you had a motion to amend his motion to not recommend the,
And my language was not recommend the text amendment proposed by staff, 3.4.50, cultural protection overlay zone standards.
That should do it.
The goal only was just to pin it down.
Yeah, we're trying to be thorough here, so there's no misinterpretation of where we're going with this. All right, is everybody clear on the these? All right.
She's talking about this whole thing. We're gonna vote on the amendment first.
We're gonna vote on the amendment first, and we've had the amendment made and motion, seconded. So, let me ask for a vote on the amendment as proposed by Ms. McMillan. Yes.
Okay.
All those in favor for including that language, raise your hand. Okay, that's unanimous. Now to the main motion. We have the motion's been made to not recommend approval.
it's the motion as amended.
The motion as amended. And we've had that seconded. So I'm going to ask for a vote. All those in favor of the motion on that was made by Mr. Henley, raise your hand. No, that's unanimous. Thank you all for being here. It was a history lesson for me. I've been visiting through a senior leadership program, and you've taught me something I did not know. No, we're not adjourned. We have one more piece of business amongst ourselves. You can leave if you like. You don't have to leave. All right.
I know you don't.
I gotta go. We're adjourned. We done? Motion to adjourn?
No, we're not adjourning. We have to let President, Vice President next.
Do it next time.
Okay. All right, the annual election for chair and vice chair of the planning commission. We'll take it first for the vice chair. Are there any nominations? Nominate Randall.
I nominate
Are there any other nominations?
Carolyn Turner. You might want to just hold off till the room clears, because you can't hear anything on the phone. Or you might want to just maybe a 5-minute recess.
I don't know if I can hold it that long.
All right, we'll take a 5-minute recess and let people clear the room that don't want to attend. We're doing our voting for the new chair and vice chair. You want to just do it? Okay, there's been a nomination of Mr. Randall Stewart.
I'll second.
Vice chair. Second? Seconded by Glenn. The motion was to elect Mr. Randall Stewart for vice chair of the planning commission. And we have a second.
I made the motion.
He made the second. You have it? I have to go back to the video to play this one. All right, all those, any discussion? All those in favor? Raise your hand. Aye. Any disapproving? Unanimous? Aye. Nomination for chair of the planning commission?
Mr. Chairman, I nominate Mr. Ed Pappas as chairman.
I'll second that.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a nomination and a second of Ms. Red Pappas. Any discussion? All those in favor? Raise your hand. Thank you. Excuse me?
I did.
Several people did.
Yeah, several of us did.
All right.
Pick one.
Are there any other business before the planning commission that anybody has, any other matters? Hearing none, I declare this meeting adjourned. I was gonna nominate you, but they had to be too fast.
All right.
Good to see you. Congratulations. For 9 years, wow.
Thank you.